Hey everybody, tonight we're debating the war in Ukraine and we are starting right now. With Infrared and Jackson's opening statement. Thanks so much, gentlemen, for being with us. The floor is all yours.
Okay, so when it comes to the formation of, this is the first context I want to establish. When it comes to the formation of military alliances, this actually extends beyond the bounds of the sovereignty within a state's own territory. Countries have an obligation to be cognizant of the geopolitical, geographic, and historical and civilizational realities that their own sovereignty is situated within. And this is specifically recognized by organizations like the OSCE, according to which, Ukraine being a member, one country, according to its founding document at least, one country's security cannot be strengthened at the expense of the security of another state. So what the OSCE establishes is that it's not just that states are just completely, totally free to just do whatever they want in terms of making security alliances and in terms of how they construct their militaries and position themselves geopolitically. There's a very delicate balance of power and security within Europe, and everyone who's committed to actually preserving long-term peace, which is what the OSCE is actually about, has to be recognized the fact that there needs to be a balance of security. There needs to be a security architecture that ensures that there is a fair distribution of security across the continent. When this balance is tipped in one direction or the other, it creates a situation of instability and geopolitical uncertainty and leads to the conditions that ultimately could lead to war and to conflict. So one has to keep this in mind when one is bringing up the issue of the sovereignty of states. States should have a right to self-determination, and states should have the right to be sovereign, but they should also be cognizant of the geopolitical and geographic realities within which they reside, so as to not create circumstances that upset the balance of security and the security architecture. So I'll give it to Jackson now.
Yeah, so the next point that I think is really important is to actually, and I would like to hear Dylan and Destiny respond to this when they talk, is to address when did this conflict begin, or if, war, when did this war begin? The war began, and they refused to call it a war. The Ukrainian government refused to call it a war for 8 years because they wanted to have IMF loans, and you can't give IMF loans to a country that's at war. But the war began after the 2014 coup that took place on the heels of the Maidan protests, which began, in all honesty, without U.S. backing. I mean, there was a plurality of people within Ukraine that were frustrated over the fact that, there was not going to be EU membership for Ukraine. And I guess there was going to be a delay in the decision. And those protests began. And then eventually they decided that they were not going to take the unfair, deal that the EU offered them. They knew that these neoliberal policies that would be inflicted upon them upon the EU deal would have hurt them much more than opening up trade partnerships more with Russia would have helped them. So upon these protests, the U.S., began to infiltrate the movement. U.S. politicians began, working with agencies on the ground, U.S. front agencies on the ground, like the National Endowment for Democracy. Victoria Nuland even boasted about the fact that, they funneled $5 billion. We'll discuss the details of the U.S. involvement in the coup later on in the debate, I'm sure. But lots of money came into these U.S. agencies on the ground to actually hijack the Maidan protests. Upon hijacking the Maidan protests, violence broke out. This was dissimilar to the 2004 color revolution that the U.S. also played a part in, surrounding the 2004 elections, which Yanukovych was also involved in. Initially reported that he won, though international Western-aligned agencies claimed that these elections were marred with corruption and discrepancies and irregularities in the vote. The election was overturned then, and Yanukovych didn't see the presidency until his second run. But after being elected, during these Maidan protests, U.S. became involved. They led a coup upon the democratically elected government of Yanukovych, and after that, coup on the democratically elected government of Yanukovych, we saw the 8-year war begin. And that's the next point I want to make. It's insane to assume that this war began, within the past 2 weeks. Everyone knows that there was shelling, there was fighting in the Donbass region. The question is, when did that begin? It began directly after the coup, thanks to the Western-aligned leader that was put into power. Now, these Western-aligned leaders that were put into power have deep ties to the, nationalist far-right, factions, radical factions within both the Ukrainian military and the Ukrainian political apparatus. There's over 80 far-right, military militias and battalions within Ukraine. Some of the most notable include, of course, the Azov battalion, which is one of the primary forces that has been waging asymmetrical warfare upon the people of Donetsk and Luhansk, who they themselves took votes to recognize their independence, which was not granted by Russia or Ukraine or Western states for many years. Though Vladimir Putin did come out and say that he respected the legality, the outcome of the elections, but he didn't actually recognize them as independent states at the time, up until just this month. So, all in all, this conflict didn't begin this week. It began during the Maidan coup. Asymmetrical warfare was waged against the people of Donetsk and Luhansk. In the past 3 years of the conflict, which is all I have been able to find data for, maybe Dylan or Destiny can provide more evidence, but according to the United Nations, 81.4% of the civilian casualties in the Donbass war came on the side of the Donbass, civilians dying there. And at the end of the day, Russia, was very, very restrained. They tried to engage in peace deals surrounding the Minsk Accord and bring peace to the region. Like it or not, think it's fair or not, he did do that for 8 years. And in that entire time, everything I just mentioned was taking place. And these Western-aligned leaders that controlled the government for different stretches of time over this period have made a continued effort to try and join NATO, which Vladimir Putin has continuously said, and I agree, would be a direct threat to their security.
You got it. Thank you very much for those openings, Infrared and Jackson Hinkle. Want to let you know, folks, if it's your first time here at Modern Day Debate, we are a neutral platform hosting debates on science, religion, and politics. And second, before I kick it over to Destiny and Dylan for their opening, if you happen to have a question, feel free to fire it into the old live chat. 100% of super chats tonight are going to Wide Orphans, and you can also tag me with @ModernDayDebate in the live chat to submit a question as well. Thanks so much, Destiny and Dylan, for being with us. The floor is all yours for your openings as well.
So Putin has been saying, it's been quoted as saying, said multiple times, that the greatest geopolitical catastrophe in the last century has been the collapse of the Soviet Union. I think if we look at the actions of Putin, not just in Ukraine, but in other countries and other states within Russia around the world, I think we can see that Putin's goal is to rebuild some sort of new body that resembles the lost Soviet Union. Whether that's going to be the Union state that includes Belarus, Russia, and perhaps some future Ukraine or not remains to be seen based on how well the Ukrainians can resist Russian aggression. But it seems pretty clear that Putin has a huge drive to rebuild what he sees as one of the, as I guess his fond memory of the Soviet Union. The idea that in terms of individual claims, I guess we'll start going through the history, but I mean, almost everything you said is either half wrong or just completely wrong. The idea that Europe was offering them an unfair deal, one of the biggest reasons why they required that EU deal was because Russia themselves began to put blockades on certain imports for Ukraine, just because they thought that the president was looking towards the European Union for a deal. The idea that the Russian deal was better when the European deal would have just allowed them access to the markets, while the Russian deal was literally an exclusive deal that would have forbade them from trading into other markets is hilariously stupid. The idea that this conflict began in 2014 is also just completely wrong. There have been foreign policy experts, I can find papers back since 2010, claiming that Crimea was under threat of invasion from Russia, and it was invaded. Russia has been consistently working with disinformation campaigns among actual military aid to places like Donbass or Crimea, since at least 2010, if not earlier. There's been a long and a rich history of corruption in Ukraine, whether we're talking about people that used to actually be in the Soviet party that became leaders of Ukraine, or we're talking about people that more or less wanted to be Putin stooges later on, like Yanukovych. I guess we'll get into the individual history of any of these particular things, but that's the idea right now today that Russia is somehow justified in their aggression and their taking over of any of the Ukrainian territory, whether that's when they took over Crimea in 2014, whether that's the eastern territories that they're trying to take over now, or the rest of Ukraine that they're trying to take over. I think it's just absolutely absurd. I would echo something that Haas said in the very beginning of the debate, that one country's security cannot be increased at the expense of another. That's a hilarious statement coming from somebody trying to defend the neo-imperialism of the wannabe Soviet Union. And I'm curious how you guys will defend this in the conversation coming forward.
Okay, so I guess the best thing to do would be start with, I guess I'll start in 2004, since I know more about like recent Ukrainian history. So the Orange Revolution, which I respect the Ukrainian people for taking power into their own hands to stop an election that was stolen, as was confirmed by the Ukrainian court system in 2004. And we call it a coup, or it was a coup of Viktor Yanukovych. What was failed to mention is that after the Ukrainian courts decided that there was large-scale fraud committed on behalf of Viktor Yanukovych in 2004, is that there was a revote. And after the revote was done, once international monitors were now involved in the situation, that's when Viktor Yanukovych lost the 2004 election. And so the Orange Revolution, that is usually cited here as a coup, what is not mentioned is, just like in the 2014 coup, there is an election after both of these instances. In 2004, there was a revote. And in 2014, after Viktor Yanukovych was impeached, he then fled the country, and there was another democratic election where somebody was democratically elected. There was also another election in 2019 where Zelensky won with about 73% of the vote. I respect the Ukrainian people in taking the power in their own hands to take back their democracy in both instances. I would also like to talk about, I know both of these people care about sovereignty a lot here. In both instances, both in 2004 and 2014 and before it, the Russian state has meddled in the affairs of Ukraine on multiple occasions, fomenting corruption, directly getting involved in elections, and directly getting involved with Ukrainian politicians and basically sponsoring them on behalf of the state. They have gotten involved in the affairs of Ukraine, and it's not that surprising that you're going to see protests against politicians like Viktor Yanukovych, and you're going to see the Orange Revolution in 2004 when a foreign state meddles in the internal affairs of another state. So it's strange for me to hear all this concern about America interfering in the internal affairs of the Ukrainian government in 2014, when there was so much of it going on ever since the creation of, ever since Ukraine voted with over 90% of the vote to separate from Russia in the early 1990s. I would also like to cite, since it hasn't been brought up by anyone, that Russia guaranteed in 1994 in the Budapest Memorandum to not invade Ukraine after it gave up its nuclear weapons and to respect the nation's territorial integrity. I would also say the spirit of that was also violated when they meddled in the internal affairs of Ukraine in both 2004, 2014, and many other instances. Besides that, I heard a lot about concern about the far right, but I heard no concern about, for example, the Russian National Unity Movement, which is a Russian neo-Nazi political and militia group that is active under the arm of the Donetsk People's Republic. They are a neo-Nazi militia that has been fighting on behalf of the Donetsk People's Republic for a very long period of time now. And so for me, this claim of denazification, or this at all having to do with denazification, is ridiculous to me. Not only are Nazis fighting on behalf of Russian-backed rebels, but there's also instances of, for example, Belarus, the leader of Belarus, which is involved in the conflict, praising Adolf Hitler, saying Germany reached its peak under Adolf Hitler. And not only that, but also we can talk about the Chechen fighters, for example. In Chechnya, they have put homosexuals in concentration camps. Now, I don't want to talk about the deep history of the gays in Nazi Germany, but if there's anything that is Nazi-esque, I would say putting homosexuals in concentration camp would solidly fall under that category. This doesn't even have to do with polling data when we talk about anti-Semitism between the two countries, or the fact that the Azov Battalion's political party, which is something that's cited on multiple occasions, has not won a single seat in Ukraine's parliament. You can add the right sector as well. The right sector has not run a single seat in Ukraine's parliament either. Now, maybe if you add in the three-finger party, you can get 1 seat out of 450. But this idea of the Ukrainian Nazi state that's being taken on by the Russians is ridiculous when the Russian government and the republics that Vladimir Putin has recognized is fighting with neo-Nazis. It's simple that the Slavs of Europe obviously have a bad memory with neo-Nazis, and it's really easy to convince your population that the enemy is bad if you call them all Nazis. If in this debate I said, my two opponents here are neo-Nazis, it would justify me being extremely terrible towards both of them because nobody likes Nazis as long as you're a normal person. We can probably get into specifics of U.S. involvement in 2014 and the labeling of it as a coup. We can get more into the Budapest Memorandum. I'm hoping we can get more into that, but I'll just end my statement there for now.
I would also like to amend to Dylan's statement that I would like to congratulate the neo-Nazi country of Ukraine for being the first country outside of Israel to have its 2 highest level political positions held by Jewish people, which is an amazing achievement for a supposedly
because
neo-Nazi
the Nazis
opening statements.
Oh,
my goodness! Opening statement.
You couldn't.
Hold on one sec, gentlemen. They do. There are still 5 minutes left for.
Yeah. Thank you. Well, if we're gonna play, now we got factoid time.
I do want to say, it isn't that surprising that these people couldn't respect the rules of debate when the Russians are not respecting the rules of war in multiple cities across Ukraine. Sorry, Desmond,
almost as though they were trying to improve the security of their opening statement by violating the security of ours. Unbelievable.
I hate to. All right. So I'm going to use the mute button liberally tonight just because I really seriously want this to be a fruitful conversation. So
I agree.
Any last words from Destiny and Dylan in terms of that opening?
Last word, just for context, before we get into debating the ethics of the Azov Battalion, this is a fighting force of maybe 2,500 people, of whom 10 to 20% are supposedly neo-Nazis, out of a Ukrainian army that has over 200,000 active military personnel. The idea that Ukraine is some hotbed of neo-Nazi activity is just hilarious. Having both a prime minister and a president that are Jewish, it's one of the biggest driving forces that Putin uses to try to push his population against Ukraine. It's absolutely pure propaganda. All right. I think are we good here, Dylan? I've got a few more minutes. Anything else you want to?
I could just list off Russian war crimes in Ukraine, since they talked about that. The targeting of civilians in Kherson, the targeting of he's laughing, demented as usual. Mm-hmm. Targeting of civilians all across Ukraine.
Since you addressed me, you're full of shit. They're not.
I can address all I want. My goodness. See,
he's laughing.
I can comment on that.
There are about 3 minutes and 15 seconds left for Destiny.
So tell him to stay on topic. Don't make comments directed at me, Pillsbury.
It's a debate. It's a debate. What do you mean? Don't make comments directed at you? Do you want to just make long speech followed after long speech?
Do you think would it be considered a war crime when Yushchenko didn't that guy say that he was really crazy? He had Agent Orange poisoning or whatever. That was kind of a random thing when he was running against Yushchenko. This is kind of strange. I'm sorry, when he's running against Yanukovych. That was kind of weird.
A little strange. I mean, but
it might have randomly,
Hey, amongst
it's a little strange. All the journalists.
Look at that. Just can't stop. See, again, more evidence that pro-Russian individuals in this conflict just can't follow rules of engagement. Anyway, critical civilian infrastructure has been targeted in Mariupol. Civilians have been bombed in Kherson again and again and again. Kindergartens have been targeted. NGOs like Amnesty International brought off
right now in violation of the Geneva Convention. I believe that the largest nuclear reactor in the world has been hit multiple times. It is currently on fire.
That's true. That's happening right now. Actually, true.
We don't have reports yet. I think I saw an RT article saying Ukrainians themselves were shooting handguns at it in order to foment false.
Did we check to see if there was a swastika on the side of the nuclear reactor? It could be a Nazi nuclear reactor.
There was a picture of a swastika that was released by Russian state media, but it later came out that it was part of Call of Duty War at War. So it was. That was the end of our opening statement. We rest our case.
All right. Want to let you know, folks. As mentioned, if it's your first time here, Modern Day Debate is a neutral channel. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button as we have many more debates coming up. And want to let you know our guests are linked in the description if you'd like to hear more. Last but not least, gentlemen, really, during this open conversation, I really do need you to work with me. It really does have to be that you're not speaking over each other because that, of course, thwarts our own purpose of having the debate if people can't hear people because they're speaking over each other. So we're going to go into open conversation. The floor is all yours.
Well, where do we want to start, gentlemen?
I'll start since you guys just went by responding to, well, I mean, there's a whole lot to pick through there, but Dylan did make the inflammatory claim that that Yanukovych was impeached. And despite the fact that Dylan claims to be an expert on the matter, yada, 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 foreign policy expert, he seems to have lost out the fact that Yanukovych was actually not impeached per the constitutional requirements in Ukraine. In fact,
I would like to finish.
Well, let me finish because you happen to not know what you're talking about.
Mhm.
So there needed to be 3/4 of the parliament to guarantee an impeachment, and they did not reach that. They did not get those 3/4 votes in order to impeach Yanukovych. And the Supreme Courts and the constitutional courts were not involved. They did not recognize this as an impeachment. I believe it was the following day or maybe 2 days after Yanukovych decided that his life was under threat and he was going to flee to the second largest city in Ukraine. He did. He fled by helicopter. And there was actually reports. The reason why he fled by helicopter is because there was reports that there was going to be a act of violence upon him committed by these far right-wing forces that were trying to lead this coup. And in fact, upon his the series of cars that were supposed to be carrying him off to Kharkov when he was leaving, when in fact he was in a helicopter, they were fired upon by snipers. So he was not impeached. There was no constitutional requirement. They didn't get enough votes. So I don't know why you said that.
Well, number one, it is a debate that is ongoing in Ukraine, whether he was legally or not legally impeached. This has been okay. You can continue to laugh.
So why'd you say that he was?
You didn't let me finish. Okay, it's an ongoing constitutional debate on whether he was legally or non-legally impeached.
Why is there a debate?
Hold on, let's just give a minute or two.
James,
a minute or two for Dylan to respond.
Okay, it is a ongoing legal debate within Ukraine, and I am going to appeal to the legal scholars in Ukraine, which said that he was constitutionally impeached. I'm going to appeal to them because I'm not a legal expert, and I know Jackson Hinkle, you're not a legal expert as well. But I do want to bring up here for a second that this is probably the first time I've ever seen Jackson in favor of a regime change war. And can we also talk about
let me appeal to the scientists.
We'll give you 30 seconds. I got to give you 30 seconds, and then we got to kick it over.
Haz, if you want to talk about science for a second, can we talk about the claim you made that the Ukrainian government was working with the American government to make bioweapons that would target Russian DNA?
There have been reports that the biolabs that are operating within Ukraine, that the Ukrainian government is allegedly solely operating, were indeed this is an allegation by the Russian embassy, and I'm going to appeal.
Do you have any evidence?
I'm going to appeal to the experts at the Russian embassy who are experts. I'm going to appeal to the scholars on military threats, the military apparatus of the Russian foreign ministry. I'm going to appeal to the scholars of the Russian military, who I trust them. I'm not an expert in the intel that all they have and all.
Which scientist has backed that up? Any scientist?
Those are Russian military foreign relations experts, and they know what's going on. They have the intel. It's the GRU. I don't know
which ones. Which
legal scholars in particular?
So my question.
Which legal scholars are arguing that the impeachment was legal then?
So you're fine with me appealing. So it's a problem for me to appeal to legal scholars, but it's not. It's a problem for you to do
I'm
that.
just applying the same standard you're applying to me.
But you were laughing when I was doing that, as if it was a ridiculous thing to do. But you're doing the same, so it's okay. I'm
applying the same standard. So all I can say is that I don't believe that the Russian foreign ministry would be lying about this.
So you do believe? Okay, how would that be done exactly? How would you target Russian DNA with biochemical weapons? How would that work? Definitely considering.
Wait, you don't know that there's. Wait. You don't know that there's biological weapons.
Let me finish.
You don't know that there's.
Let me finish.
Hold on one second. To be fair, hold on, gentlemen.
Let me finish.
Wait, do you not know that?
Gentlemen.
Look at him.
You don't know that's a thing.
Let me finish.
Guys, seriously, just to be fair to Infrared, you did ask him a question. I want to give him a chance to answer that last question, Dylan. I promise I'll kick it right back to you.
Okay.
Yeah, finally, you don't know that that's a thing, that there's biological weapons that are being developed that target the specific DNA of specific peoples, that the U.S. was accusing China of developing this and vice versa for China. You don't know about that whole thing?
My problem is it's very difficult for Putin on one hand to talk about the united history of both Ukraine and Russia, and to have the amount of relations between Ukraine and What?
Yeah, we know they share DNA.
Right? Yes. So how are you going to make biochemical weapons that target Russians?
Ask
but there's no evidence for this.
Well, can we just ask a more reasonable question? Wait, don't you think it's why would we trust the Russian state media who is trying to
it's not the state media,
fabricate?
It's the Russian embassy.
Let's
which
give
is
Steven 30 seconds, and we'll kick it over to you and Fred or Jackson.
So, if I were to try to tell you that I know that Iraq has weapons of mass destruction because the U.S. State Department...
This was not the pretext for Russia.
Oh my God! Wait, is there an echo in my? Was that my voice echoing?
Gentlemen,
because it's pivoting.
It
This was not the pretext
the
for its special
question.
operation, so it's not a relevant debate.
We have to.
It's off
I
topic.
promise.
Destiny, you started this debate bitching about not being off topic.
Apparently, we have to. So I hate to do this. Just let's
right.
give it another 30 seconds to Destiny. We'll come right back to you, Infrared.
Okay, I don't understand because I don't think the Kremlin Gremlin would be happy if I were to cite the U.S. State Department when the United States is trying to enact a unilateral war against another country. I don't think I'd be able to say, well, the United States has this thing. You would need some sort of like external European Union body or UN body or somebody looking into something. So for Russia that's trying to justify a unilateral invasion of a country to say that like, well, their embassy said that this was a bioweapon, I don't think that's that's fair.
I feel bad for you, Jackson.
Yeah, if this
Infrared, you got to do me a favor. You can't if you're gonna unmute yourself. Come on, you got to work with me here.
Oh, but so I'm gonna take his insults and not respond.
Right,
We're not gonna play
now's
those
your
games.
You can insult me, but just do it in your time.
He's gonna sit his
Infrared,
little bitch ass gnome ass down and fucking put some respect on this, or I am gonna fucking cut him off. Now, if this was the pretext for Russia's special military operation, you would be right. We would need that evidence to be provided. But that's not the fucking pretext for the special military operation. It's another type of allegation, the details of which have not been disclosed to the fucking public. So arguing about it is fucking pointless. You want to know my fucking opinion? I trust that they wouldn't make this up because they don't need to, because they have plenty enough, such as the fact that the Ukrainian government is infiltrated by anti-Russian neo-Nazi forces. And we're going to talk about that, actually. You said that because Zelensky is Jewish and that there's Jewish representation in the Ukrainian government, that there couldn't possibly be neo-Nazi sympathies rampant in the Ukrainian ruling elite.
I never said that there weren't neo-Nazi sympathizers. There might be sympathizers, but that's not what your initial allegation was.
Was Nazism solely defined by anti-Semitism? No, it was anti-Semitism actually was just a subset of the pan-European supremacism that defined Nazism. They were anti-Semitic because they considered Jews to be foreign to Europe, right? The main thrust actually was targeted toward Russians who were considered Asiatic and Slavs to the east in general.
Wait, who?
And they wanted to enslave and exterminate
who?
The Russians too and the Slavs too.
Who the fuck asked? Nobody cares. This has nothing to do with what we're talking about.
No, it does. Because the fact that
let
Zelensky is
finish.
Jewish doesn't fucking mean that the Ukrainian government can't have neo-Nazi sympathies. Stepan Bandera, who is a Nazi collaborator during World War II, is widely celebrated in Ukraine by the Ukrainian government. They're putting monuments by him. They're putting his pictures up during Maidan. He's been exonerated and he's been rehabilitated, despite the fact that he was a fucking Nazi collaborator. Now, if you can't square that consistency with the fact that Zelensky is Jewish, you should go ask Zelensky himself why he's the head of a state that is celebrating a Nazi collaborator despite him being of the Jewish background.
So are you saying that the Russian Nazis like Jews? They're fine with Jews? I mean, the Ukrainian Nazis, they're fine with Jews? They're like pro-Jew Nazis?
That's a question you should raise to them. And
I'm asking you. I'm raising the question to you.
They may harbor anti-Semitic views, but as far as I'm not concerned, there is nothing impossible about the idea of Western Ukrainian who are from Jewish descent to also have neo-Nazi sympathies themselves.
Having sympathies for somebody that might have been a national hero. Oh, I'm sorry. I don't want to interrupt you.
Infrared, we've given you a good amount of time. Let's kick it over to Steven, and then Jackson, after Steven, just in case Jackson has anything too.
So this is like Nazi propaganda. It's hard to tell the difference. This is like Putin propaganda 101. Okay. So the original claim was that the government was full of like neo-Nazis. Now it's shifted.
It is.
Infra.
Am I done talking? Holy shit. Now the claim is moved all the way back to, well, there is a hero that was pretty inarguably a neo-Nazi that some people in Ukraine celebrate.
The whole Ukrainian government.
Totally. No, it's not. He's an incredibly divisive figure. And there is an incredibly divisive figure, even in Western Ukraine. Okay. The United States. Can I finish a fucking sentence? Holy shit. This isn't your Spencer debate where you're going to ramble for 12 fucking hours without letting me get a fucking word in, okay? The idea that just because somebody worships some hero or some country said, oh, this guy was really important in our history, means that the entire country is all of a sudden infested with neo-Nazis is no less true than when the United States celebrates any fucking hero that has a sordid history or has been racist or has been anti-Semitic or whatever else. The fucking United States took in Nazis after World War II in exchange for some of the scientific information they could give us. It doesn't make us Nazis. It doesn't make our government full of neo-Nazi sympathizers. If you want to make the argument that Ukraine has neo-Nazi sympathizers, then you need to show me neo-Nazi actions happening today in Ukraine, not trying to allude to some hero that a prime minister, in 2010 or whatever, decided to nominate as some fucking hero because of his history in Ukraine. You need to show me something current about that. What are the neo-Nazi activities that Ukraine is taking on today? Don't tell me who was nominated as a fucking national hero.
You're completely full of fucking shit. You just said that Stepan Bandera was only incidentally a Nazi collaborator. His whole historical significance was that he was a fucking Nazi collaborator. He has no significance outside of that.
I think I can add some context to this.
It's not like the inventor of the fucking telephone who happened to be a racist. This guy, his primary historical significance was being a Nazi collaborator who betrayed the Soviet Union and was attacking them on behalf of the fucking Nazis. To exterminate the Slavic and Russian and Ukrainian peoples, to create a westernized Ukrainian collaborator state. So you're completely full of fucking shit when it comes to that. Finally, you want to know about the neo-Nazi activities that are going on now and have been going on in the past 8 years? Sure, it's the Azov Battalion, which is the vanguard of Ukraine's military in the eastern Ukraine and in the Donbass, which is regularly attacking civilians, regularly shelling civilian infrastructure, regularly embarking on a campaign to slaughter and exterminate the Russian peoples in eastern Ukraine. They committed the massacre of Odessa back in the early days of the Maidan, all sorts of fucking neo-Nazi activities. They burned people alive. They've hung people. They've slaughtered people. They've made people disappear. If you want to talk about neo-Nazi activities in fucking Ukraine that are now in contemporary here, we have a whole host of fucking...
Every single thing you just described, modern day Russia.
Add some context. I want to jump in and add some context.
They crucified people. They crucified people.
None of that was neo-Nazi in all of
it's not neo-Nazi to crucify people for being
No,
Russian.
it's not a neo-Nazi war crime.
Listen. You guys have all been
to be a Nazi to commit war crimes.
You guys have all been talking. Let me get in my 2 cents now, okay? So, at the end of the day, the primary goal of the ideological inheritors of the Organization for Ukrainian Nationalists, which is the vanguard of fascism in Ukraine. This is the ideology, the radical faction within this organization, especially of Stepan Bandera. They are the people who are primarily responsible for the hundreds of thousands of, Jewish, Polish, and Russian deaths that took place during World War II when Western Ukrainian ultranationalists and neo-Nazis were collaborating with the actual Nazis from Germany that were invading. Okay, so ideological inheritors of this ideology, and apologies for not being able to pronounce these names properly, but Oleg Tianyabuk, who is the co-founder of Oleg Svoboda, he claims that he wants to purge Ukraine of Jewish people and Russians. He was ranked the 5th most anti-Semitic political leader on the planet in 2012. It just so happens he was a people's deputy in Ukraine up until 2002. But this guy right here, who was a co-founder of Svoboda, also co-founded this ultranationalist right-wing party with Andrei Parubi. He was the leader of the Euromaidan protests. He was the one that helped organize the violence that was inflicted upon the what's assumed to be roughly 50 individuals who died in the massacres on February 20th of 2014 at Euromaidan. He was the speaker of one of the most recent parliaments, the chairs of one of the most recent parliaments in Ukraine. He was the leader of the Society to Erect the Stepan Bandera Monument in Ukraine, and he claims that Bandera was the most important person in Ukrainian history. So it's not just, and I could go down a list here. You could Maxim Marchenko. This individual, Zelensky, replaced as civilian governor of Odessa, commander of the far-right Adair battalion. You have Viktor Yushchenko, who is president. he actually publicly, before leaving office, signed a decree stating that for an unbreakable spirit of heroism, self-sacrifice, and the struggle of the independence of Ukraine, I'm granting a status of hero of Ukraine to Stefan Bandera. You can look at tons of people. Andriy Belitsky, Ukrainian white nationalist. He was the co-founder of the Social National Assembly, first commander of the Azov Battalion. He's celebrated on TV shows. He was a big part of the Maidan protests. You can go down the line. Many members of or deputies of the
30 more seconds.
People's Deputies of Ukraine, National Security and Defense Council, secretaries, all of these people within the Ukrainian military and government have had some sort of an ideological either sympathy to or participation in, a lot of these people have, with neo-Nazism. Okay, and this is the last thing I'll say regarding neo-Nazism. This is a shocking video. There's a video of some of the neo-Nazis who helped organize and carry out the Maidan coup, who said, if not for the 8% of neo-Nazis, the effectiveness of Maidan would have dropped by 90%. And these were the same people that were funded by, indirectly funded by U.S. agencies on the ground, like the National Endowment for Democracy. Last thing I'll say is
that was the last one that
Dylan or Destiny.
Yeah, real quick. So just as a quick
if the Azov are marginal, if the Azov battalion is marginal, then why did Poroshenko in 2014 say they are our best fighters? Why did even the mainstream Western press report that as far as Ukraine's eastern operations were concerned, the Azov battalion was of vital significance? Why did the National Guard
of Ukraine... That was the last question.
We can't answer 400 questions. They made a post on... So just as a real quick thing, okay? Like, you can go back as much as you want, like 20 years ago when Ukraine was barely a country for 10 years and the country was still mired in corruption, and try to say, well, these guys came from these parties that were like, blah, blah, blah. Like, show me anti-Semitism in Ukraine, right? Ukraine is like one of the most...
parliament.
Can I hold on. Hey, come on.
There are a lot of points.
Yeah. So where is the anti-Semitism in Ukraine? Where is the Nazism in Ukraine? You can't point to the civil war happening in the East and going, civilians are dying. That's Nazism.
Nazism isn't
you can't point towards people being killed extrajudiciously, people that are being invaded and genocided, people that are being deported from their lands. Because if you want to call that Nazism, then we just have to go over to the East and look at Putin. He's the biggest fucking Nazi alive right now. So the idea that in and of itself qualifies as anti-Semitism, when Ukraine is probably the least anti-Semitic country in Europe, according to the Ukrainian Jewish Center, or according to the Ukrainian Jewish Encounter, at least, when you look at the fact that people in Poland are so eager and keen to take on people that are fleeing from Ukraine, like we don't see this mass persecution of Jewish people in Ukraine. We don't see any like rampant anti-Semitism in Ukraine. You can go back all you want and point to like one hero that was nominated by an outgoing prime minister, or you can, point to these people that in the very beginning came from far-right parties. But there's just no evidence today that there is this rampant anti-Semitism, this rampant Nazism in Ukraine. It doesn't exist.
Where are you getting this idea that the only measurement of Nazism is anti-Semitism? Nazism was also...
Thank you very much. So there's also something that's really interesting here, and it's that Nazism seems to matter so much on one side. Nobody cares about the neo-Nazi militias fighting on side by side with Russian soldiers. Nobody even brings them up. The Russian National Unity Movement and the militias fighting on behalf of the Donetsk People's Republics. That isn't brought up. Why? Because those are inconvenient Nazis. Those are Nazis on the Russian side. People don't talk about the fact that we're talking about the Nazis are bad. Why are the Nazis bad? Obviously, because they put people in concentration camps and they slaughtered people and all the war crimes that he brings up. But the fact that the same people involved in putting homosexuals in concentration camps are right now within Ukraine fighting against the Ukrainian government, that isn't something of concern. I heard them laugh when I talked about Belarus, the Belarusian dictator, Lukashenko, praising Adolf Hitler. These things are inconvenient facts because the problem is, right, and this is the fact of the matter, there are Nazis fucking everywhere across this conflict. But the problem is the people want to hype up the Nazis on one side to make them the Nazis because Slavic people have a terrible history with Nazis. If you can make your opponent the Nazis, then boom, they're the bad guys. Anything you do against them is justified. If I could stand here and tell you that Russia is a Nazi state, I could bring up the fact that 5% of Ukrainians believe that Jews should not be allowed to be citizens, while 15% 15% of Russians believe that thing, almost triple that statistic. I could bring up the Lukashenko quotes about Hitler. I could bring up the gays being put in concentration camps in Russian territory. I could bring up the neo-Nazis militias and say, so Russia is a Nazi state, but that would be dishonest. But I'm seeing that dishonesty from both of you right now, trying to paint Ukraine a Nazi state. And I don't even think Jackson and Infrared got their points in order. Jackson saying that they are anti-Semitic Nazis, Infrared saying that these are Nazis who love the Jews. I can't even.
I didn't fucking say that. What I actually said was that the emphasis on anti-Semitism may not be as strong as the emphasis on pan-European supremacism and racial exterminationism, but that's the fucking point. And moreover, the movement for national unity is not at all fucking relevant or prevalent within the fucking Donbass. They're fighting.
Hold on.
Yeah, they're nowhere near as relevant or proportional to the fucking forces of the Russians that are fighting in the Donbass as is the Azov battalion. They're marginal. They're completely marginal.
But
they're Islamophobic. The Chechens are fighting. The Chechens are right now a very important part of Russia's operation right now. You think the Chechens are working alongside these totally Islamophobic prevalent forces? No, they're not prevalent. They're fucking completely marginal.
And
if
you take into account the premise of what started this entire conflict back in 2014, the Euromaidan protests and the violence that ensued there, and the fact that it was co-opted by these coup leaders that were Western backed. You do have to acknowledge that the effort to accomplish this and the success of the movement was led in great part thanks to Andrei Parubi, who is the speaker of one of the most recent parliaments and the chair of one of the most recent parliaments in Ukraine. This is the guy who literally sparked the entire conflict. Another thing I heard you say that was even maybe more damning than the fact that you falsely claimed that the president was impeached when he wasn't impeached was when you said that you claimed that, or maybe it was Destiny actually. I might be getting my quotes wrong. One of you said that Crimea was illegally invaded by Russia. I'd just be curious, hear your thoughts on that more, and whether or not you respect the will of the Crimean people who voted in a referendum overwhelmingly to legally join the Russian Federation. 96.77% voted in favor of joining the Russian Federation.
Was that after the invasion?
2.51% supported staying in Ukraine.
Jackson, was that after Russia invaded Crimea? They held that referendum, right? I just want to get that fact right.
What do you find?
We can talk about the specifics.
Well, I just wanted to hear yes or no. Is that Jackson? Was that the Russian referendum they held after they invaded Ukraine?
What do you find? Listen, what do you find as a Russian invasion? Because going back to 1804, there has been Russian troops in Crimea.
The invasion of when they took over, when they invaded Crimea.
You can't answer that question.
I gotta respond.
Continuously invading Ukraine, despite the fact that they have had troops there since 1804, then sure, we'll call it an invasion, but we both know it's not an invasion.
The Crimeans declared their independence before the Russian invasion, just like the people in the Donbass did. Just like
having troops stationed in a port is not the same as taking over the entire peninsula.
Separated from the Ukrainian government.
What's your evidence they took over the entire peninsula? Because there are plenty of videos on the ground of people saying they are not threatening anybody. They're here peacefully.
Who has sovereignty right now over the Crimean Peninsula? I'm sorry. Who administers right now to the region of the Crimean Peninsula? Is it the Ukrainian government? Yeah, or is it the Russian government?
It's a part of the Russian Federation since they voted.
Okay, so what does it mean to Russian Federation? And they voted that. Who held that referendum?
The referendum was organized by the people of Crimea.
Under who? It was a Russian organized referendum that it was organized by the
Crimea. What actually happened?
Pardon my interruption. Just to be sure that Jackson, did you feel like you had enough time to answer that last question from Stephen?
Sure.
Got you. Okay. And then I think, Stephen, you were asking.
So a referendum that's not recognized by any other country in the world, including Ukraine, obviously.
Why don't
the
you
idea that you could invade the idea that you could invade some part of a country and then hold a referendum there to see if those people want to stick with you or not? Even if we granted all of that they did say yes, you can't just have populations referendum away parts of your country's sovereign territory to other invading nation states. That's just not how that works. Even if that was the case, I don't care what's interesting you. Even if that was the case. That doesn't work that way in any other part of the world.
Yeah, that's not what happened. That's not what fucking happened.
Respecting the results.
Listen, Destiny. One of the ways.
No, wait, dude. Hold on. James, seriously, they can't just throw out like 50 million. I didn't talk at all. I didn't even answer your question. I didn't even get to answer his question.
Let me respond to what you said.
Not to mention the fact that,
gentlemen,
you stop
I
talking.
hate to do this, but I do want to say, Dylan, is there anything you want to clean up on behalf of Destiny, because we haven't heard from you for a while?
There's two things. The first thing I wanted to bring up is that I didn't hear from Infrared really. He just said the Chechens are fighting the yes, but Chechens involved in putting homosexuals in concentration camp.
That doesn't make them Nazis.
Wait, no. Listen to me. Whether
Even
or
if
not,
those allegations.
let me finish. Whether they're Nazis or not specifically doesn't matter. Because
Okay, then just say that.
Let me finish.
Then
Jesus.
just say that.
I don't care. Shut up. I don't care. Okay? I'm trying to finish my point. I think that people who put people in concentration camps, minority groups, should not be involved in any active combat zone anywhere. In fact, they should not even be allowed to hold governmental positions. And I'm not finished, and so you should stop talking. And so with that in mind, and knowing when you guys talking about all these war crimes and everything that was so terrible, I think it's weird that we can just look past the fact that one of the people involved currently in fighting the Ukrainians are the same people who shoved people in concentration camps in Chechnya. Also, it's weird that you are fine downplaying your guys' Nazis. You admit, I guess they are Nazis fighting on behalf of your guys' side. You'll downplay your own Nazis and upplay the other side's Nazis because your Nazis, again, are inconvenient. It's inconvenient that there's Nazis on your side. And so instead of being like, there's no Nazis on our side, these Nazis are fighting a campaign of denazification.
Also,
Dylan,
too, I never even got to finish my earlier response to Jackson's neo-Nazi shit.
I was almost done. Also,
It's my fucking turn.
One
It's my
last thing.
fucking
It's
turn.
one last thing.
It's my fucking. Dylan's talked too much. It's my fucking.
Okay, wait 1 second. All right, I do want to give Infrared a brief chance, and then Destiny, I know you have a couple of points you want to make. So, Infrared, I want to give you a chance.
Yeah, let's go.
Maybe
so the first
2
thing
minutes
is
at the
very
most.
clear. Dylan, I know that you're in favor of a Nazi, pan-European supremacist, but LGBT-friendly ideology. I already know that, okay? But the fact is, I agree. It's probably true that there's homophobia in Chechnya. They're very much more in favor of more traditional values. That's their business. As far as concentration camps are concerned, I've seen no fucking evidence for that, throwing them in concentration camps. But even if I were to grant you that that was true, that still doesn't make them fucking Nazis who want to exterminate whole peoples because of their fucking nationality or their race or their ethnic origins. You seem to think that's not as bad or that's some kind of equivalent, right? But I don't think that's a fucking equivalent. I don't think having a conservative country, which I don't agree with persecuting sexual minorities, I just don't think that's on the same fucking level as being a goddamn fucking Nazi. You seem to not fucking care about that distinction. Now you're saying that I'm downplaying the Nazis on the Russian side because they're not convenient. Never mind the fucking fact that in terms of the objective significance they have compared to the fucking Azov battalion on the Ukrainian side, they are nowhere near as fucking relevant. They're not significant. They are marginal. They are marginal.
Yeah, okay, I thought it was. Hold on, Infrared. Infrared, 1 second.
Objective.
Infrared, hold on. I just need you to. I thought it. I did sense something too. It did seem like your volume.
He
did
jacked
go
his
up
shit
like
up.
20 seconds ago. It did seem like something.
Yeah,
changed.
because you're making everybody louder than me.
No. I promise I'm not.
Was that Russian
I don't even know
propaganda?
how to do that.
I mean, these Nazis.
People in my chat
These
are
are.
telling me that. People in my own chat are telling me
Infrared,
that.
I can give you 20 seconds on terms of
Yeah.
wrapping up your
20
point,
more?
but then I've got to kick it over to Steven.
Dylan is making the claim that that it's just inconvenient for me, rather than the actual reality being the fact that the Russian nationalists and the Russian neo-Nazis are completely marginal in the Donbass, whereas the Azov battalion are not. He mentioned something also about Lukashenko's comments that were taken out of context. Lukashenko is an anti-fascist, 100% anti-Nazi, 100% anti-Hitler. We can actually get into the nitty-gritty of what proves and backs that up too. You took some statements he made out of context.
Steven's been waiting for a while to respond. I want to.
Yeah, so just to reiterate again, the Azov battalion is not making up the brunt of the fighting forces in Eastern Ukraine.
In Eastern Ukraine, they were.
This is a small battalion of like less than 3,000 fighters. The idea that these people are making up the majority of Ukraine's forces is just not true. And even of the Azov battalion, only a minority of these people are neo-Nazis. Even of the Azov battalion, a minority of these people are Nazis. There are problems there for sure, but this claim that there is a broader Nazi problem in Ukraine, I mean, At this point, maybe there is, if we're defining Nazis as people that are pro-LGBT and pro-Semitism. I don't know what kind of Nazis these are or what makes them Nazis, aside from earlier you said they kill people, which I
European
guess everybody
supremacist
on the planet,
racist.
is everybody's Nazi? I don't, like, Hitler wasn't going for like pro-European supremacy.
Yes, he was!
Okay.
I would like.
Did you really just say he wasn't going for European supremacy? In his last fucking speech, he talked about how Europe will be triumphant against the hordes coming from Central Asia. Europe who? Every member of Europe, every state that he invaded.
Yes,
he was a European supremacist. He was a Western European supremacist. He considered Western Europeans. I'm just curious. And everyone else to be subhuman.
Would you characterize the Nazism of Germany as having a large anti-Semitic component and having a large ethnic component, where that ethnicity is not defined as European?
The Aryan is literally Western European for the Nazis. That's literally what it is.
Okay.
I would like.
Okay, because you're a little
Jackson,
bitch and you never fucking defend what
Jackson,
you just said because you're
would like
fucking
to jump
wrong.
in. Let's have Jackson. Go ahead.
I would like to just say one thing really quick and then a broader point. So Destiny seems to be just hyper focusing on the Azov battalion, which, yes, is, making up the brunt of the violent, aggression against the people of Donetsk and Luhansk. Which, keep in mind, that war, 81% of these civilian deaths that have taken place there in the past 3 years took place on the side of Donetsk and Luhansk. But as I mentioned, the people who literally led this coup are the ultra-nationalist right-wingers, many of whom, but not all, are anti-Semites and encompass this neo-Nazi, ideology. You seem to be leaving that out, and I can guess the motive why.
Why do you keep
to get to the broader point here, Destiny? A few minutes ago, you said that it's not okay for, and I'm paraphrasing, so if you want to rephrase this after the fact, go for it. It's not okay for troops to come into what you recognize as a sovereign country and, forcibly bring about a change of power. I think that's, we can both agree, right? So why is it that you think that it's okay, I guess, for these far-right paramilitary groups that encompass this neo-Nazi ideology to hijack the Maidan protests, massacre people on February 20th when the protests were actually dying down and people were going home, and cause all of this violence to spiral out of control? And then when negotiations are going on between some of these neo-Nazis and the Yanukovych government to try and bring about pre-term elections to restore some order to the Ukrainian government with Yanukovych, the neo-Nazi factions, again, like Andrei Parubi, who was the leader, the commandant of the Euromaidan protests, he ordered upon his paramilitary individuals to continue blockading, to continue, holding their ground, so to speak, and holding their ground throughout the entirety of this protest meant raining down hellfire upon both protesters and police to incite more violence. And there's been countless Maidan leaders and activists who provided testimony that they were the snipers. It was not members of the Ukrainian police who were doing this.
Or Destiny.
Wait, so do you not believe that Yanukovych ordered his special military people to fire on protesters? You think that's just completely and totally bullshit?
Oh, 100%. There's no evidence. And in fact, the
Ukraine's Ministry of Internal Affairs literally says as much. Why do you say there's no evidence of that?
Because the Ukrainian investigation into this, the special investigation into this, actually did not make any initial charges against people who were involved in this. And again, in the
they didn't make charges because Yanukovych wasn't even given guarantees that he wouldn't be charged. That's why he fled to Russia. Unlike the prior prime minister that was able to have a transfer of power because he was guaranteed he wouldn't be charged, Yanukovych wasn't given any such guarantee. That's why he left the country.
My point here as to why I'm right.
Not really. Also, earlier you said you keep citing the fact that you keep citing the fact that in the East. Wait, hold on. Wait, I barely talked. This guy's like rambled so much. I haven't responded to half what the shit guy said.
There's no evidence for this, so I'm going to answer the question.
We'll come right back to you, Stephen.
So you said, why do I think that there's no evidence for this or whatever? So the Ukrainian investigation, they didn't find any. And in fact, again, there's been several Maidan leaders and activists who provided testimonies, while 14 self-admitted members of the Maidan sniper units admitted in media interviews to the Maidan massacre, to sniping police and protesters. Several former members of the Georgian military testified that they and other groups of Maidan snipers in Hotel Ukraina, where these bullets were coming from, and the investigation actually proved that bullets were coming from here. They just never actually went to the extent of saying who was in the hotel.
I do want to kick it over to Stephen. I did, just because I did give you a chance to answer the question. I should jump back to Stephen.
Oh, there's a lot of evidence. So if Stephen wants the full answer, he should be willing to get the full answer.
There's like 20 different things I haven't responded to. So who's finding
the goalpost?
Hold on.
I'm not changing. You're the one that's adding a new goalpost at the end of every single sentence you've said.
You literally said
so
what's
I can't even respond. I can't even respond. Okay, hold on. Wait, okay. Are we doing this right now? Is this what we need to do to get the conversation going? Okay. So who do you side with? Who's ruling? What organization, what government's ruling do you side with that said that police did not fire upon protesters during the Euromaidan?
What side do I side with?
No, whose investigation are you citing? Whose details? Whose findings? Not a one-off media interview that was posted on Russia Today.
I'm referring to the testimonies given by the snipers themselves.
Testimony to who? Why would you only agree? Why would you only look at some testimony? Why wouldn't you look at the overall ruling of the Ukrainian Interior Ministry?
Because the Ukrainian investigation did not place fault on either side, though according to the testimonies themselves, they admitted fault for doing this.
It's not that they didn't place fault on that. They explicitly said that Yanukovych ordered his police to fire upon the protesters. Do you deny that they said that?
They did not place blame on them.
Why do you keep saying place blame? Who's saying place blame? They made the statement. Their findings said
who did they charge? Because
I don't know if it was I don't think it was their role to charge anybody. And Yanukovych already fled the country.
It was their role to place charges. They didn't place charges because they couldn't find evidence that the police did this. In fact, the reason why Destiny, why can't you give me an answer for this? There were testimonies that the Maidan, the Maidan organizers were the snipers who shot at police and protesters. We have forensic examinations as well by government ballistic experts, which determined that about a dozen cases that the protesters were shot from Maidan-controlled structures, including the hotel. A forensic ballistic examination found that the bullets killed protesters did not match bullet samples from the police. I mean, I could go on and on. Why are you making assumptions without looking at the evidence itself?
Because I feel like I would rather rely on the overall rulings or findings of the entire committee rather than just trying to go off of some of the testimony that you might have found given by some of the officers that may or may not have been involved.
Well, I could go on more, but you have to understand that this committee at the end of the day is being controlled by the coup government who actually carried out this operation.
But earlier you had no problems going by information that comes from the Russian State Department about stuff going on in Ukraine?
I'm not talking about that right now. I'm talking about this. Why I'm actually looking at this investigation fairly and honestly, and you made the accusation that it was police from the Ukrainian, security services that fired down. Now you're getting caught in a little problem here. So you're trying to deflect back to earlier discussions. Why did you make that claim without evidence?
Why did Yanukovych flee the country? Was it when he wasn't given a guarantee that he'd be prosecuted?
Because it was a coup government that was going to fucking Trump shit up.
It was a coup government that was led by the guy that he was going to make his prime minister anyway.
Destiny, I just want to say one last thing on this point because clearly you're refusing to acknowledge the reality of the situation. Most people consider what took place on February 20th when 49 individuals were killed as the most controversial hours in any European conflict since the end of the Cold War. It was the precipice for this coup. It was what launched all of this conflict into action, so to speak. So the fact that it was a false flag attack led by the coup protesters themselves, the militia organizers themselves, to try and get Western backing and to try and incite more chaos in the streets when the protests were dying down is a very, very important note when you look at the broader context of all of this and the fact that after the coup that took place because of this, that is what sparks the increased aggression in the Donbass. And that is what also sparks the increased aggression against protesters in Odessa who were fighting back against the coup government.
You have no evidence to support any of that, that there was Western backing to any of these people, that any of this was a false flag. Everything you're going off of is complete conjecture. The testimony of one or two, I've got testimony in the United States of Bigfoot and UFOs abducting people. The testimonies of one or two people doesn't prove any of the claims that you're making.
Let's just actually go to U.S. involvement in this, because I have a lot of quotes from actual diplomats themselves who admitted that they were involved in providing funding, direct funding to the Maidan coup organizers. So first of all, we have Victoria Nuland and Jeffrey Piot, who were two U.S. diplomats, U.S. Ukrainian diplomats at the time, who have a viral leaked phone conversation admitting to the fact that they were handpicking the coup government. They said
that conversation, where?
You want me to send you the link to it?
No, because I've already read the entire conversation. They don't admit that ever.
What did that conversation say?
They never said anything about handpicking the new government. It wouldn't even make sense. Really? Yes, really. Give me the quote where they say that.
Do you want me to
give me the quote where they say that? Yeah, read it.
Okay. We have a leaked phone call here. They said, fuck the EU, referencing to the fact that the EU was not being aggressive enough during this whole situation. And then we said, or we have Victoria Nuland here say, Yats, referring to Yatsenyuk, is the guy who's got the economic experience, she said, referring to opposition leader Arseny Yatsenyuk, who backed the devastating neoliberal policies that were demanded by the West. So they were discussing whether or not Yatsenyuk was going to be an effective leader in the new government. And they were saying, well, maybe this person should be directly outside of the new government with Yatsenyuk. And Destiny, guess who ended up becoming the
Hold on, real quick, because you keep pivoting, asking questions, adding commentary. None of this shows them picking a leader. As you said, Yatsenyuk was already the opposition leader. Where is this idea that they picked him?
Who became the prime minister?
What do you mean? Yatsenyuk?
Yeah. Look at
who was already the opposition. He was already the opposition leader. He already had 370 plus votes in the parliament. What do you mean?
Andrei Puriby was the Maidan coup leader. He was the real opposition.
No, wait. Where is the evidence that he was handpicked? How was he handpicked?
Why could he have not become?
Wait, why? Because he didn't have the backing in parliament for it.
He became the chair of parliament.
No.
Why could he have not become the leader?
No, you're pivoting. Where is the evidence that this guy was handpicked by the United States, that he was pushed by the United States? A conversation about this guy saying he would be good when he's already the opposition leader is not evidence of him being handpicked by the West.
Well, there was multiple people in that conversation that they were going back and forth.
Yeah, they're going back and forth discussing potential. Yeah, you have no evidence. This is everything you do.
Just Destiny or sorry.
How is that no evidence?
Wait.
If there's evidence in the phone call of two diplomats saying, "Man, this leader in this country would be so awesome," and yeah, that other one sucks. Do you think that's evidence of an assessment to?
It just so happens, Destiny, that she admitted that the U.S. Stoked this coup with $5 billion in previous years to lead these regime change operations.
Wait, where did she admit that? Read that quote. Read that quote. Read that quote where she admit that.
Okay, I will. Give me 1 second here.
Can we all sit in silence while he reads and wait for it? I want to hear that quote where she says, the United States sent $5 billion in aid to stoke this coup.
Let me pull it up.
And if he pulls it up, will you admit you're wrong?
Yeah, if he has that quote, I would be interested in hearing that. We don't have to be silent. I'm sorry, Dylan. Go ahead.
Give me 1 second. I will read
exactly where the $5 billion went. I would be interested in that too.
In the meantime, folks, our guests are linked in the description. If you haven't already clicked on there, you can hear more from them.
Also, I would just like to say that there is tons of evidence of the Chechen government putting gays in concentration camps from multiple news outlets. Testimony.
Well, that's not what we're debating today. The only thing.
But the thing is, you disputed it, so I'm just acknowledging.
Yeah. Well, we can debate that another time. But for now, what we're saying is that is not the same as Nazism.
Okay, but is that of concern? Do you think?
If I was Chechen, I would be opposed to it, but I don't live in Chechnya. It's not my business.
So do you think that fighters who put gay people in concentration camps should be active in combat in
Ukraine? You cannot make the racist claim that all Chechen
soldiers... No, I'm not saying all Chechen soldiers, but there are officials who were involved in that fighting in Ukraine right now.
Which ones?
You know the one that you're like, Dylan, you liar, you've said this guy died.
That guy is alive?
That guy, right? Yeah, you're saying he's alive. That guy, he specifically was okay. I'm saying, okay, that guy. Let's say he's alive. That makes your argument even worse. That guy was involved in putting homosexuals in concentration camps.
Okay, I haven't seen any evidence for that.
There's tons of evidence for it. It's
not
even something to be disputed.
In case you have that quote, Jackson, I don't want you to feel left out.
So Victoria Nuland, U.S. Assistant Secretary of State, estimated in 2013 that the USA had, quote, invested more than $5 billion in 1991 to help Ukraine achieve the future it deserves. Or sorry, since 1991. Since 1991.
So since 1991, they've been investing money to have the coup in 2014. Do you not think that the Ukrainian citizen?
Wait, the context of that year?
What was the quote again? Can you say it one more time?
Yeah, let's hear the quote again.
Since USA had invested more than $5 billion since 1991 to help Ukraine achieve the future it deserves.
What does that mean? How does that mean that they're achieving a coup? That could mean, hey, we're giving them money to help Ukraine get better.
Victoria Nuland had leaked audio recordings handpicking Yatsenyuk
they
as the
didn't
new leader.
handpick. We've already talked about how that's bullshit.
Also, we saw that
he didn't handpick.
The National Endowment for Democracy's president said this about U.S. support. He said just 2 months before the Maidan protest broke out, he wrote that, quote, the opportunities are considerable and there are important ways Washington could help. And this was in reference to the coup. This was the president of the National Endowment for Democracy.
There's nothing specific. It's all vague. It's nothing specific.
So here's the question. Where did the money
go?
Where did the $5 billion go? Yeah. So who received the money to start the coup? It's not the goalpost. This is where we're at. We're in the middle of the field. Like
the thing is, I know about this because
Putin
said exactly. Putin said this specific thing, and the thing is, the $5 billion did not go anywhere near a coup aid or anything. The $5 billion.
Where did it go then, Dylan?
So I'm asking you. I'm asking you, Jackson. Jackson, you said the $5 billion. No, Jackson.
Where do you think $5 billion?
You said it.
Where do you think $5 billion
Jackson.
from the U.S. State Department went?
Jackson, you said it. You said it.
I get
it.
You can pretty easily logically infer that the fuck.
Okay, pardon my just to be sure that people can hear each of you make your point. So just going in order, we'll go alphabetically, which is DHJ. So okay, Dylan, and then Haas, and then Jackson.
So Jackson, you talked about the $5 billion. We're saying it did not go towards a coup. I don't see no evidence of this. This is something Putin repeated in his speech, which is a lie. So I'm asking you, since you referenced the $5 billion and you have yet to show any evidence that anybody was handpicked, where did it go? Where did this $5 billion go for this coup?
So Dylan, I know you're a fucking dumbass and you can't put two and two together here. There is logically nowhere else the $5 billion could have gone.
So you don't know. You don't know.
It couldn't, logically speaking, it couldn't have gone anywhere else.
$5 billion from 1990. Wait. Do you know the history of Ukrainian-American relations since 1994 to 2014?
Yeah, Dylan, shut the fuck up. Let me finish my point.
$5 billion couldn't have gone there in normal aid.
Unless Jackson has something.
You don't think?
Jackson,
mute him so I can respond. Yeah, let him leave like a little.
Or you might be on mute, Jackson. Let me unmute you. I think I put you on there earlier. Okay.
All right. Can you guys hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
The Financial Times, you're right, Dylan. Sure. I don't have the exact bank wire transfers and shit. You're right. I'm just completely making all this stuff up. Financial Times, though, reported that groups like New Citizen received this funding, and they reported that this money played a big role in getting the protests up and running, referring to the Maidan protests. This was led, of course, by Andrei Parubi, who's a notorious neo-Nazi within Ukraine that, called upon the firing of protesters and police in the protests. There was one other point you made. It's slipping my mind right now, but yeah, I mean that sure, we don't have the exact bank wire transfers, but you can't entertain the fact that this all happened. $5 billion here. We have these phone recordings. We have all of this going on. We have, Chris Murphy, John McCain, Victoria Nuland, Jeffrey Piot going out on the streets of Maidan, passing out cookies to the protesters.
He's doing the gish gallop.
Let me finish.
Oh my God, dude. It's just a million bullshit points. Like when one
15 more seconds, Jackson, and then we got to move.
Every time I get interrupted or you interrupt. So let me finish. You cannot entertain, or you have to entertain the fact that the funding began in 1991, 1 year directly after the effort upon NATO-aligned countries to bring Ukraine into NATO, that lines up perfectly with what the overarching mission at play here is of Victoria Nuland, to get the anti-NATO forces within Ukraine deposed from government, that's Yanukovych, and to get pro-NATO individuals in government to join NATO.
Gotta move it over. Okay.
So I gotta respond to that, because the thing is, it's also 1 year after the collapse of the Soviet Union and Ukraine went into economic ruin. And the $5 billion is something Putin stated as well. That's referencing to the entirety of US aid to Ukraine from that date to 2014. So you're telling me that the entirety of US aid to Ukraine was made up of just going to coup stuff when you have no evidence, no financial documents, no transactions, no direct evidence of any sort, then any of that went towards resources towards a coup. It is reference to aid.
He named it.
No, he didn't. He named nothing.
You left because you're a little bitch. You weren't here.
No, he didn't. So where did it go? Where did it go? And what did this group do that did the revolution? What did it do?
Helped organize the protest. It was a group
the $5 billion went to what? What?
So I'm saying that Financial Times reported, again, you're right. I don't have the exact wire transfers. I'm not in these people's bank accounts. I'm just saying it's a little bit suspicious that we have Victoria Nuland saying that we have $5 billion going to Ukraine since 1991. Victoria Nuland's office happens to be the same office in which the National Endowment for Democracy is located. They share an office in Ukraine. We have Financial Times reporting that New Citizen received some of this money. Sure, probably, definitely not all $5 billion of it. And it just so happens that these protests, which were Western-backed, and we know, according to this phone call, they were at least sympathetic to the, leader Yatsenyuk, who became the prime minister directly after the protests. This stuff all lines up. And it just so happens.
Hold on. I gotta respond. Okay, so we haven't established a single fact. We literally haven't established a single fact. We haven't established a single fact.
So we've established so many.
Okay, so all we've seen.
I have the fact right here.
All we've seen is that since
coming right back to you.
In 1992, after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, the United States and Ukraine signed a bilateral deal where the United States would send aid to Ukraine to help them for a variety of things. They identified 3 strategic objectives. It was to create a broad-based market economy, to help build a participation democratic political system, and to assist in social sector reforms to ease the difficulties of transition. That's where the money went towards. The governments themselves were the ones that were organizing and receiving the aid. The idea that you're trying to pretend that this $5 billion that's been allocated since 1992 somehow went through black market channels. If it did, then we wouldn't be talking about the $5 billion that the United States said that it sent. This would be black money or dark money that's going through other channels that you wouldn't have any idea about. Or rather, it would have been established by like a WikiLeaks leak or something like that. The idea that official U.S. aid that was agreed upon by the Ukrainian government, that it was going to end up in the Ukrainian government, and then somehow the leaders in the Ukrainian government decided to allow that aid that they as a government agreed to accept to be funneled to groups that would eventually form a coup is ridiculous. A lot of this aid was far-reaching. It wouldn't surprise me if you could identify 1 or 2 groups that were involved in protests or coups that received this aid. Yanukovych probably had a lot of personal friends and probably people in the government that received that aid as well. The idea that aid was used to back some sort of coup because you have a recording with 2 U.S. diplomats talking about a preference in leadership in a relatively volatile country, I don't understand why you think you can link these 2 things together. I can tell you right now that the United States sends so much aid all across the world. I could probably find aid going to every single fucking country that's ever had a revolution, that's ever had a coup, that's ever had any sort of political turmoil, and find 2 U.S. diplomats talking, expressing. Can I finish one statement? I gotta finish.
I totally don't know how we could link.
Well, gee, I have to finish a single. I have to finish a single statement.
Nothing else.
I have to finish a single statement.
So finally, we can wrap this whole thing up right now.
So to be clear, so the evidence we have is that since 1992. The United States has sent $5 billion to the Ukrainian government, not to secret groups, not to protest groups, not to future coups, that the Ukrainian government itself okayed this bilateral agreement to humanitarian aid. And the only evidence that we have, and the only evidence that let me finish. The only evidence we have that this went to fund a coup is 2 U.S. diplomats talking on the phone, expressing a preference for some leadership or a failure of the EU to act on something.
Okay, let me go now. Okay, because this is actually really fucking simple. So first of all, there's like many prongs to the fucking stupidity you just laid on my fucking table. Now, the first thing is that you actually contradicted your little friend Dylan here, because Dylan, the fucking liar, just sat here and said that the $5 billion was an economic aid to Ukraine. No, it fucking wasn't. Because Nuland herself, who publicly denies funding the Maidan coup, in the same sentence she utters denying it, said that the $5 billion since 1991 was there to promote democracy. And you know what that fucking means? It means promoting NGOs, civil society groups, and forces within the Ukrainian government that are aligned with the US. Now, you're trying to make this allegation, it's absurd that they would fund the Ukrainian government that's later going to be overthrown. The thing is, the whole of the Ukrainian government wasn't overthrown. There are elements within the Ukrainian government that were against the president at that time. The coup was actually against the president, not the entire Ukrainian state itself. And even during the presidency of Yanukovych, before the 2014 Maidan, there was still a division of spheres of influence within the Ukrainian government between the Americans and the Europeans on one hand and the Russians. It was not a Russian puppet government by any stretch of the fucking imagination. It was still just as divided. And that $5 billion that was given to the Ukrainians since 1991 was going toward the forces that ultimately would culminate in the Maidan. Now, Jackson literally gave you a concrete fucking example.
I could give another too, Haas.
I want to respond.
That received funds from this $5 billion, that participated, that was pivotal for it helped organize protests for the fucking Maidan. So the whole point is that this $5 billion for regime change and democracy exporting that the U.S. was giving the Ukrainian government, which I reiterate, Bill the fucking liar claimed was economic aid when it was not.
Oh, really?
It was political influence.
So can I get a commitment on it? Can you give me a commitment that none of this money went to economic aid?
No, you're shifting the goalpost.
Wait, no, I want to hear that. Oh,
you're shifting the fucking goalpost.
There it is.
Some of it may have had an economic component to it, but it was primarily to promote democracy. You made it seem like it was primarily about economic aid.
Number one, that's not even true. Okay, that's not even true.
It's not true.
So yeah, number one, 1.1 billion of it went to economic growth. 2.4 billion went to things like military assistance, border security, human trafficking issues, international narcotics abatement, law enforcement interdiction. That's actually the majority of it. The majority of that is not promoting democracy. It would actually be labeled under promoting peace and security when you talk about things like human trafficking, which is a legitimate.
Then tell Newland that yourself.
Let me finish. I'm just telling you the exact money amounts, where it's going, and you're rejecting it. I'm telling you exact money. And the thing is about that, human trafficking, it's after the collapse of the Soviet Union, there was a lot of issues when it comes to children being sold into sexual slavery. There was a lot of issues.
Which the CIA is involved with.
Okay.
Bro, he can't just keep screaming into his microphone, jacked up as loud as possible. Like, you want to cry about?
I'm trying. Okay. So
Jesus.
Okay, so back to the issue. This is why a lot of this money went to Ukraine. It went to things to deal with things like human trafficking. It went there to deal with economic aid after the economic collapse post-Soviet Union. Some of it, of course, some of it went to 800 million of it went to governing justly and democratically, and 400 million went to investing in people. We can get into specifics if you want to break that down, but there was no evidence in the $5 billion of the $5 billion, any of this going into black sites or anything of this sort. The majority of this money didn't even have to do with democracy necessarily.
We've got to go into Q&A shortly, but I know that Jackson, I think you wanted to say something.
So yeah, I would like to say something. So we also have the fact that at the start of the Maidan protests, the 3 new TV shows in Ukraine, that news TV shows that were covering the protests and working with opposition were Hromadsky.tv, and there was 2 other ones. Let me see if I can find these here. But while I find these, I also want to note that these 3 TV stations received funding from the Dutch and U.S. embassies, as well as the Renaissance Foundation, which was funded by George Soros. The other 2 were Spilno.tv and Eknepeco TV. I don't know how to pronounce that. And George Soros, during the coup, the Maidan coup himself, admitted, quote, "I set up a foundation in Ukraine before Ukraine became independent of Russia, and the foundation has been functioning ever since, and it played an important part in the Maidan events right now." And then the third point, because again, you've alleged that I can't provide evidence for this, I've also provided the New Citizen organization, which was involved in the coup. We also have Yevhen Karas, who is the leader of Ukraine's neo-Nazi terror gang, C-14, which again helped lead the coup. He was the guy who said that if it were not for the 2% of neo-Nazis that were active within the Maidan protests, it would have been 90% less effective and successful. He said, quote, "We are now being given money, so much weapons, not because, as some say, the West is helping us, not because they want the best for us, but because we perform the tasks by the West, because we are the only ones who are ready to do, because we're the only ones who are ready to do them, because we have fun killing, and we have fun fighting." And they wow, let's see what's going to happen. That's what they said.
Okay, can I do a thing, because we're going into Q&A soon? Let's actually say, if Dylan will allow me, let's actually grant all of this. Let's say that there was a coup. Let's say that there was some revolution for some reason. Future leadership is still maintaining a lot of popularity throughout most of Ukraine. Let's say that all of that happened, okay, but it was a coup, it was illegal, all that shit. What right does that give Russia to invade Ukraine?
Oh, that's very simple. We should have gotten that for the start. So we talked about the balance of security architecture within Europe, which Ukraine was planning on upsetting with its plans to fucking join NATO. But that alone, you're right, doesn't justify an invasion, which is why Russia kept trying to negotiate with its Western partners for some 8-9 years about this issue, leading to fucking nowhere, to the point where they finally tried to negotiate with Ukraine also about the issue of the Donbass to settle a peace. And Ukraine signed the Minsk agreement to have a ceasefire in the Donbass. As recent as January of 2022, Ukraine made it very clear that it had no intention to implement the Minsk agreement, which said that they would lead to the destruction of our country, and we had to sign it at gunpoint by Russia. Now, finally, Ukraine's continued attacks against the people of the Donbass, what amounts to basically a genocide, the constant shelling of civilian infrastructure, and the daily terrorism experienced by the people of the Donbass by Ukraine's armed forces in the Azov battalion. Russia decided to step in finally and recognize the republics. And when those republics became sovereign in Russia's eyes, and Russia did this, by the way.
Wait, can we do this simply instead of rambling about the entire history of the? We're gonna ramble.
When those republics continued to be shelled and attacked after they were recognized.
He's just sprouting up history. Yeah, he does this every time. He can't answer a question.
Yeah. This is the fucking answer. Russia is justified. Russia is justified for no other reason than to protect and guarantee its own security as a country, as well as to.
So my question then is,
to protect the people of the Donbass.
So my question is, why does the security of Russia supersede the security of the Ukrainian people? When you open this with the quote about how the security of one country...
Sure, because the security of the Ukrainian people was never under threat by Russia. It's NATO who is tipping its balance in the opposite
How is the security of Russia under threat by NATO?
How is the security of Russia under threat? No, sure. NATO has a history of disrespecting the sovereignty of other countries and invading other countries.
Like Russia does right now with Ukraine?
This is a fucking self-fulfilling prophecy. Russia's doing what it's doing in Ukraine to prevent NATO aggression against Russia. Russia has no plan on forcing.
So why can't Ukraine have legitimate security?
Russia doesn't export its system or its values. NATO does. It's that.
Russia, the Soviet Union absolutely has in the past. Russia's absolutely looking to
Russia is not the Soviet Union. And second of all, the Soviet Union did not fucking export its system by military force. No, it didn't.
It absolutely did.
No, it fucking didn't.
Absolutely.
Name a single example of that.
All three of the Baltics, at the very least.
The Baltics were not taken by the Soviet Union to expand its system, but because it was a form of revanchism for the former territories of the Russian Empire.
The countries were invaded, had their parliament disposed of, and then took votes and held referendums to join the Soviet Union. Sounds similar? Like Crimea. Russia, the Soviet Union has a huge history of doing this.
Referendum, 96% of
not crazy. How after you get invaded, crazy. Hold on, whoa. I can't even finish my question. Finish my question.
You cannot say that.
Let me quickly finish this point about Crimea. 15 seconds. First of all, the people of Crimea made the decision first.
I do want
and then the Russian military came.
Hey, come on.
Dylan's been waiting for a long time. I do want to give
They declared independence before.
Okay, so what's really interesting about the Crimea thing is we keep bringing up the referendum. Jackson, can you tell me what were the options on the referendum?
Oh, the two choices.
They declared independence before the.
Wait, no, Jackson, could you answer that question quick?
They declared independence before.
No, I'm asking Jackson a question. I didn't ask. What were the two options? What were the options on the referendum? What were the options on the referendum? What were the two options? What were the two options? Answer my question. What were the two options? I
don't care how you want to construe it.
96% declared.
Answer my question. What were the two options?
It was legal.
What were the two options?
The Crimean government.
You're not answering my question.
Dylan, it was because they
Can you make him answer my question?
Earlier on,
can you make him answer my question?
Hold on, all right, gentlemen. All right,
He's not going to answer my question. He's dodging it. Okay, so the reason it's my time to talk. If he's not answering my question.
Okay, so I do want to give. I want to go back to Dylan. We'll give him a chance, and then we'll give you a chance to answer the question. Jackson, Infra, I've got you.
They had already declared independence.
Okay, I was just to say, I've got you on mute.
Okay.
Give me a break here.
So the reason why Jackson isn't answering my question is because the two options, neither of them was joining back with Ukraine. So they
already chose not to do that.
Shut up, please.
Sorry.
Jesus Christ. So the reason why a lot of people, including like Crimean Tatars and others, boycotted.
They already declared independence.
Jeez Louise.
The reason why. The reason why.
They had already declared independence before.
James, I can't do it, man.
You can't because you're a They declared independence before Russians came. They rejected
I don't know
government.
how he's unmuting himself. All right, well, let's go to Dylan. You had a question?
Yeah, I never got to finish.
Liar!
I didn't even get to say what I'm lying about. You didn't even let me lie yet. I'm about to lie.
Because they had already declared independence.
Let me lie. Okay, let me tell my evil Western lies, and then you can like talk later. Okay, so my evil Western lie is that neither of the options on the referendum was to join Ukraine. It was A, join Russia formally, or B, be an independent state heavily influenced by the Russian government.
Is that what it
Those
said,
were the
Dylan?
two.
Is that
that's
exactly
not
what it
That's
said?
not the exact words. It was a lot.
You're fucking
James,
such a
let me get this
bullshit.
point in. I'll stop interrupting.
Jackson, I never. James, if I can't talk, I can't talk. I can't debate if I can't.
About the snipers.
James, I can't debate if I can't even talk. I can't. I can't.
Okay, hold on. What was the question that you had, Dylan? That we do have to go.
I don't even have a question anymore. I'm just trying to say something, and they won't let me.
Let me get 1 point in 15 seconds.
No, I don't care. I don't care.
I'm
not making.
Give me 15 seconds. Give me 15 seconds.
Is that to be fair to Dylan? He had waited a long time. Dylan will give you a quick, pithy response, and we got to go to Q&A.
Jackson did not know what the two options on the referendum was. That's why he wouldn't answer my question, or it was inconvenient to him. But neither of the options was whether Crimea could join back with Ukraine. And the problem is that I don't care. Please, for the love of God.
They had already formally declared.
Okay, we're going to the Q&A.
Wait, no, James, let me get this last point in. I've been trying to get it.
I never got to finish.
Let me get one last.
No,
10 seconds.
Constantly.
Just give me 10 seconds.
Difficult.
Give me 10 seconds.
No, just find a way to fit it into one of these questions. This one coming in from Ozzy and Talk says, Putin destroyed Russia, and there is no way back from them without Putin stepping down and Russia apologizing. European Union should join NATO. Putin will go down in history as an example of one of the worst global leaders ever. Save the kids.
One addition, Russia should also pay reparations.
Yeah. I'll answer that question very easily. So Crimea had already declared its formal independence.
That wasn't the question. How was that the question?
Shut the fuck up, you little bitch.
Crimea
had already declared.
Okay, we have to keep this civil. Okay.
Crimea had already declared formal independence before the referendum.
Could they do that under the Ukrainian constitution?
They didn't need to because it was overthrown in a coup. The Ukrainian president was overthrown in an illegal coup. So the Constitution is in the air and it's out of the fucking window, you fucking dumbass.
So the Constitution matters for thee, but not
when there's a coup that's suspended.
Dylan, do you think that
not when there's a coup?
That's interesting.
James, why do you keep fucking asking me, but you let him 10 minutes, but you keep asking me? Let Dylan talk. Mute him once.
You think that a coup violates?
You don't fucking mute him once. Let me fucking respond to it. The Constitution is thrown into the air when there's a fucking illegal coup.
You gotta kick him.
I would like you.
His timetable isn't even accurate. The Declaration of Independence for Crimea took place after.
Dylan's literally acting like a coup doesn't violate the sovereignty of a given nation.
Wait, real quick, just because Husky's screaming this. The Declaration of Independence from Crimea happened after the Russian invasion. The fact that he's trying to say that it happened prior to that isn't even true.
No, it didn't.
Russian troops were on the ground in February. In late February, Russia was pushing into Crimea.
They were pushing into Crimea. What the
Declaration of Independence was on March 16th.
Go ahead.
What does it mean pushing into Crimea? Go ahead.
As in Russian troops rolled through the area with little resistance and took over the entire fucking peninsula.
I wonder why there was little resistance, because they had already expressed and declared their intention to be fucking independent.
Even if they had,
sections of your country cannot just vote themselves to join another country that has military bases in that peninsula aggressively positioned to go and invade you. It doesn't work that way. That's not how sovereignty works.
Did it at gunpoint,
to join
right?
another
It was
debate.
at gunpoint.
Can we do that?
This one coming in from Can Fight says, just got
Wait, I never got to
posterity.
respond to Jackson's question about sovereignty. I want to answer it.
Super short and pithy.
Okay, so Jackson asked me if a coup violates a nation's sovereignty. It depends on who actually does the coup. If the people of said nation overthrow the government, I believe they're allowed to do that. And so that's what they did in that instance, because the Yanukovych regime was morally corrupt and worked against the interests of the people. Sorry, there you go.
Let's jump in.
There was no
Thank you very
vote
much,
for the
Can
coup,
Fight.
Dylan.
Can Fight
That's
says,
not how
just
coups
got
work.
The majority
posterity.
of
They had an
people.
election. They had an election after.
There wasn't
People
even a majority
They had
that
an
wanted to
election.
join the EU.
They had an
Not even
election
at the
afterwards.
time a
I
majority.
think we need another mute here on the Moscow
So
Manlet,
you're
please.
saying that now they have a
Hey,
majority?
look,
Gentlemen, I
bitch
hate to
ass
do this with both of you,
gnome.
but both Dylan and Haas, I've got you on mute because we do have to get to the next question.
Destiny
People have
has
taken a lot of-
Destiny. His torso is
God.
big though. He's short.
You're-
He looks like a
you're
fucking
the-
torso
okay.
group.
This one coming in from Can Fight.
He just
says,
has a long torso.
Gosh.
Looks
Okay,
like
Can
Sid
Fight
from
says,
Ice
just
Age. He has
got
the body of Sid from
posterity.
Ice Age. He has the body of Sid from Ice Age.
Repeat it a third.
Next one. Thank you very much for this question from Can Fight says, just got posterity. Russia just attacked the largest nuclear power plant in Europe. A violation of the Geneva Convention. Also, Russia has a huge Nazi problem. In parentheses, Limonov literally made Nazbols. You know I have trouble pronouncing these things.
The
Are we
fuck
allowed,
are you
are we
talking
allowed to
about,
answer that
Limonov?
question? Are we allowed to answer that question?
Limonov is a
Who's that
fucking
question addressed
anarchist.
to?
Can we answer
Limonov is an anarchist. Have you read anything about Limonov, the fucking dumbass asking that
Bro,
question?
like, it's
Can
like
we answer
you're
the
flipping
question?
the bat switch and you're drowning everybody else out. Your audio is just off the charts. I'll give you a chance to respond in front of Jackson, but it's just
Yeah,
your
why
audio.
is it that I feel like we should be condemning crimes against humanity and war crimes on both sides of this. That's why I support the International Criminal Court investigation into war crimes that have taken place here since 2013, which the media seems to be leaving out of the announcement of this ICC investigation and the preliminary examination into war crimes and crimes against humanity here. But the thing is, if you're going to talk about war crimes and crimes against humanity and civilian casualties taking place right now in Ukraine, then you better be talking about them taking place in Donetsk and Luhansk still today, and the ones that have taken place there overwhelmingly in this conflict that has been waged asymmetrically by Ukraine, by the Azov Battalion in particular in eastern Ukraine, since 2014. People seem to leave that out.
Yeah, wait, can we all agree that that would be a good idea then? I think that Russia should pull its troops and respect Ukraine's sovereignty. And then after they do that, we can have an independent investigation to see if there were any human rights abuses committed.
The 25th of February, protesters blocked the Crimean Parliament and expressed their will to be independent. So that was before the
Wait, that's not
Russian
even on
invasion.
topic anymore. You're still
according
rambling
to
to
the
put the
preliminary examination led by the International Criminal Court. Who launched the first war crimes and crimes against humanity here in this conflict?
I want to actually address two things.
Oh, that was a question for Destiny.
But I wanted to. Can I agree with you?
I'm trying to. That was a question for Destiny.
Jackson, I want to agree with you.
Destiny, who did it?
Can I? Okay, I won't agree with you then. Okay.
Destiny, who did it? Do you even know? Do you even know what the first war crimes or crimes against humanity committed here were?
We should let independent organizations go in and investigate. We should let that. Nothing that you're saying
Jackson,
justifies a Russian invasion. It's so easy. It's so easy. It's so easy.
Stick to whatever fucking Minecraft bullshit you
It's so
spend hours
easy.
playing
It's
every
so
single day.
easy. Yeah, go quote random U.S. diplomats that you saw
Minecraft?
on an RT post about how that proves that there was like
I'm
Western
quoting
involvement
the
in a coup.
International Criminal Court investigation into war crimes, which you claim to care about, but only
What does every single international court
Only
say
when they're
about
taking
what does
out
every
Ukraine.
what does every single international court say about Russia's annexation of Crimea?
What does the
you're
international
pivoting.
No, let him answer. Let him answer that. Let him answer that. Let him answer that. Let him answer that.
Oh, that's a great question.
Pivoting
That is a
Stephen.
great
Pivoting
question,
Stephen.
Destiny.
Who recognizes the Russian annexation of Crimea?
That's a great question, Destiny, because the International Criminal Court has said that the crimes against humanity and war crimes
he doesn't. There
started
we
in
go.
this
He
conflict
doesn't have an answer.
were from
There it is.
Ukraine. That's a great point.
Because you
that they
pivoted,
started
Destiny.
all of it.
There it is.
First you said he was quoting a random
Context
journalist,
there.
and then he quoted the International Court, and you fucking pivoted like a pussy. Pivoting pussy.
Absolute pussy.
Hey, James.
Anglo-
Let Dylan go.
Dylan
Pivoting
wants to say
pussy.
something.
Let Dylan speak.
I've been attempting to do something dastardly, and that's actually agree with Jackson for a second. And I actually do agree that there have been a lot of war crimes actually committed in Donetsk and Luhansk. And one of the biggest issues I'd point to specifically has to do with water security. I believe it was UNICEF that wrote a report about water security issues in there caused by the war. It's just, I don't believe the best way to deal with human rights abuses on either side is to expand the conflict, because now electricity, water security, all these resources are now going to be even harder to come by in not only Donetsk, Luhansk, but in the rest of Ukraine as well. We've already heard about like reports in Mariupol and
Let's move to the next one.
Yeah, I'm trying to agree with Jackson. We already heard about reports in Mariupol and other locations about critical civilian infrastructure being undermined. And so the best thing to do. Well,
so Dylan, I have a question back for you.
I took Mariupol in 2015.
Shut the fuck up for a second. Shut the fuck up.
Sorry, I do want to do this.
Destiny, I have a question back for you.
Hold on, I do. We have so many questions from chat.
I agree with you. I agree with you. So why is it that
James, mute him.
James, mute him. Questions from the chat. Plummy 005 says, how long does a group of people need to live in a land in order to have a claim to it? People say that the Russians in Ukraine were imported there 200 years ago, but we can say the same for any group of people going back enough.
Destiny, who took Mariupol in 2015?
Your mom.
It was the Azov Battalion, you fucking idiot. Just because they're not the majority of the
They were involved in one military operation. That's crazy.
Of a whole city? Of a whole city?
Do not think it was
of a whole city?
Vladimir Putin.
And you're saying they're marginal?
I can't hear you, Jackson. It's impossible.
This one coming in from...
Dylan.
Jackson, do you have something?
Yeah, no, I agree with what Dylan said. I condemn war crimes, crimes against humanity on both sides. Yeah, and I think they should be investigated. People should be held accountable. We have to recognize, though, who started this, and you made a good point about that. The thing is, though, do you not give any credit to Vladimir Putin for trying to get everyone to adhere to the Minsk Accords for years and years and years that would have brought an end to this brutality?
Nobody adhered to it. It was violated on both sides continuously. That's why the second set didn't even get signed.
Who violated it first and who expressed an unwillingness
both sides say both sides violated
first. It was unwillingness to implement it. Ukraine literally said they had no intention to implement it despite signing it.
It's okay. This one coming in from, thanks for your question. Pivot Cyroy says, question for Infrared and Hinkle. If this unjustified invasion was done by Russia to protect the people in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, why does Belarus have details for invasion plans for Moldova?
Based on what evidence? Show me the evidence.
That's actually from Belarus. Lukashenko, he showed a map on screen during a speech, I think 2 days ago, where that showed invasion plans from Transnistria specifically, not Moldova.
They could be contingency plans. How do you know those are invasion plans? Those could be contingency plans in case the events change.
I have no clue. I mean,
so listen, that seems to be a development that we are either not aware of or don't have the intelligence to answer completely. I'm not gonna be like if we test Putin and Putin turns out to be like a full-blown raging sociopath and he continues on and does disgusting things at a grotesque level, then of course I'm not going to defend him or anything like that. But what we have to understand is that, and I thought this is where the question was going, right now, it's not just about Donetsk and Luhansk. Putin is he's not even asking for Zelensky to step down or his, government to step down. Putin is just asking for demilitarization of Ukraine, which means removal of foreign weaponry. He's asking for no NATO membership ever, a guarantee of that. And he's also asking for, yes, the ending of the slaughtering of civilians in Donetsk and Luhansk. So those are what they're fighting over right now. And it's a very restrained peace
What else
proposal.
is he asking for?
He also made requests to the United States and the European Union during the negotiations before the invasion that they end nuclear guarantees for Eastern Europe and also pull troops out of Eastern Europe as well.
That has nothing to do with the terms of a ceasefire and peace and withdrawing troops.
Okay,
that was prior to whatever happened.
Yeah,
but it was during it was still okay, but it was still part of the negotiation. But I want to.
He's not going to the negotiating table asking for that right now.
I'm going to stop trying, James.
That's for the Americans and Europeans. That's not for Zelensky.
Saying he's not going to the negotiating table. Go ahead, Dylan.
Okay, so the first thing I want to say is they are actually, Zelensky and the Russian government are actually negotiating right now. I think they just actually negotiated, thank goodness, like a humanitarian corridor, hopefully. I don't know if that's going to be placed in places like Kherson and Mariupol. I hope it is soon. I don't know when that's going to be implemented. They are negotiating, but that's ongoing negotiation process. I thought the question was broader about all the demands made of Putin's government up into this, but I did want to include that. I also do want to say that you said if he goes crazy, I would just say The attack on the nuclear facility tonight, which caught it on fire, is something I would be extremely concerned about.
Okay.
You don't know
considering
I'll
about
answer
that.
I'll answer that. So first of all,
I wasn't finished.
Wait,
Okay, go on.
okay, let's cut both of you off. Lewis says,
Okay.
question for Infrared and Hinkle, how exactly is the RT network not misinformation and propaganda if it is literally Russia today, quote,
Sure.
Russia today, because they said it confirmed
Because
Russian
whenever
state-owned
we
media
ask people
outlet
for
controlled by
concrete
the Russian
instances, whenever we ask for concrete instances of misinformation of what we report from RT and in our recent reports, we have get nothing. Nobody's ever able to come up with any actual instance in which they're lying. Destiny fucking soyed out and raged when he saw me fucking cover RT because they were covering the humanitarian situation where 50,000 had to be evacuated from the Donbass, and he literally lost his shit and fucking he started soying out and started crying like a little bitch because this was misinformation. He wasn't actually able to point out why it was misinformation or what lies RT was telling.
Keep these questions coming.
Yeah. Wait, can I ask you a question about that? Did Russia ever pull troops from eastern Ukraine in accordance with the first Minsk agreement that you guys said that they were a party to?
What are you talking about?
Why, Destiny? Why should they adhere to any of the Minsk agreement if Ukraine is already coming out and saying
So
Ukraine
nobody,
never-
so
Ukraine
nobody,
never-
so
Ukraine
just to be
never
clear,
displayed
nobody
any
ever
intention
adhered
to
to the Minsk
implement
agreement.
them.
Nobody
First of all,
ever
two things,
adhered
two
to
things,
it.
two things.
Nobody ever adhered to it.
No,
This
two
is
things,
why
two
they
things.
were a monumental
These
failure.
signatories to the most recent Minsk
James,
agreement.
what's the next question?
The
Did-
signatories
hey,
to the most
did
recent
the
Minsk
Azov
agreement
battalion
were
questions?
between
I
the
don't want to
Did the
leave
Azov
the
battalion
Donetsk and
remove
Lugansk
their
republics
heavy
in
weaponry
Ukraine.
from the
Russia
gray
wasn't
zone?
even part of them.
There's like
Second of
three-
all,
okay,
as
hold
far
on.
as the
I
Minsk
hate to do this.
agreements,
We do
the
have to jump
Ukrainian
into the next
government
question.
has never displayed a willingness to implement them.
Okay, turn that down. Okay,
There's
this one
video
coming in from
evidence of you being
Bracky-
shorter than me. Do you know?
No, there isn't.
Bracky
Actually,
Morager says,
there literally isn't.
question for Jackson.
Do you want to
and
bet money on
Infrared.
it?
Okay, they said if the annexation of Crimea was justified, would the annexation of Texas and other territories justified during the Mexican-American War?
The difference here is
No,
that
this is in our favor. The U.S. annexed Texas in an even worse. They annexed the Mexican territories in an even worse way. Texas first declared its independence and then joined the U.S. in a similar way that Crimea declared independence and then joined Russia.
Wait, were there international bodies claiming what you could or could not annex at the point when the United States was annexing territory in the western U.S.?
What do you mean international bodies claiming what you can
When we
and
say
cannot
something is
annex?
allowed or not allowed, usually it's with
because the
respect
West
to-
says it's not okay. Is that what you're saying? Because the West says you can't do it.
when you're
you
looking
can't
at
do
things
it?
like the UN, like the Soviet, or I'm sorry, Russia's party to these organizations as well. Like, what do you mean?
Okay.
You can't say like, did the United States do something like illegal?
The UN is not the
1700s
be-all,
or the
end-all.
1800s.
The UN
when
is
these
not the-
when
Hold
these
on, guys.
international bodies don't
the
even
UN
exist.
is
It doesn't make
the
any
UN
sense.
is not the be-all end-all to the recognition of sovereignty.
Destiny, did it adhere to international law when there was a coup against the democratically elected government before the Crimea referendum?
I don't know what international law would have justified a Russian invasion. Can you fill me in on that?
You know what? I actually.
You don't have an answer for that. That's
no,
right.
no,
Okay.
no.
Destiny,
You don't care about
Destiny.
international law. You don't care.
Hey,
From
shut,
Chris.
let me finish here.
Destiny, do you
I'm
need pass for gynecomastia? Because that's what you have.
Shut
Shut the fuck up. I'm actually,
Gynecomastia, Steven.
Haz,
He has
I'm actually
gyno.
not surprised. I'm actually not surprised that Destiny didn't know the answer to that question because, again, his debate partner earlier on claimed that there was a legal impeachment, even though it didn't even meet the legal qualifications of the Ukrainian constitution. So I'm not very surprised.
Destiny, would you say that you're
let's
skinny
move to the
fat?
next one.
Would you say that you're a fat guy who's a little
Guys,
skinny?
we have so many questions.
I got called a liar though. If you call somebody, I just want to say that. Okay,
Did they get
let's say-
3/4 of the votes?
Let me respond here. I wanted to say something because
Destiny, there's video
Hold
evidence
on,
of you
let's
having
give
very
him a
wide
chance
hips.
to respond if he was called a
I am.
liar. I do want to give him a chance to respond. I think he's going to the bathroom. Dylan? All right. Well, this one coming in from Chris Morlock says, Dylan and Destiny, do you deny that 4,000 ethnic Russian civilians, 80% of civilian deaths, have been killed in the Donbass? I mean, I don't know if I'm saying this wrong.
Why do we
war?
keep using this, Jackson? This is like the RT propaganda. Like, did you know that like 83% of civilian deaths have come from Eastern Ukraine? Yeah, the civil war is in Eastern Ukraine. It's not like there are going to be Western Ukrainians killed in Eastern Ukraine.
No,
I don't
we said
understand. I don't
80%
understand
were
what the
ethnic
point.
Russians.
Yeah,
We said
because the
80% were
majority of the
ethnic
because the
Russians.
majority of some of these places is ethnically Russian. Those
So
are the
why is
civilian deaths.
Ukraine
that are-
attacking a place where the
Destiny,
majority are
no,
resisting
no.
them?
Because right now there is a
Why are they
civil war
attacking
there
a place
where,
where the
that is
majority
being
are resisting
funded
them?
and supported by
That's-
Russia. They're trying to establish sovereignty in their own borders.
Okay, Jackson, go ahead.
So Ukraine can commit genocide then,
you're
right,
not,
Destiny?
Jackson.
That's a genocide. They're targeting and trying to erase the ethnicity of a certain group of people on the.
Hold on. All right.
More or less, yes. They're trying to
Wait,
eliminate the Russians.
I have a
and
response to this.
Destiny.
Hold on, Jackson. I promise I'll come right back to you. I know that. Hold on, just bear with me, Jackson. I understand.
He's barely gotten to talk,
Dylan,
James. This is ridiculous.
All right, hold on. I promise, Jackson, we'll come back to you. But Dylan, I know that you said you wanted to address someone called you a liar.
I wanted to. This is more important to me, actually. I would say I'm a dirty liar. But Secretary General, I want to specifically, the Secretary General of the United Nations actually commented on the accusations of genocide by the republics of Donetsk and Luhansk, and they said that there's no grounding to them.
Sorry, can you repeat that?
And the UN is the be-all, end-all for.
I'm not saying it's the be-all.
No, Russia should be the be-all, end-all.
Can you repeat that, Dylan?
The Secretary General of the United Nations said that there is not a genocide in the Donbass.
Okay, well, first of all,
former Prime Minister of Portugal.
Hey, let me finish. First of all, I never made the claim. Second of all, that there was a genocide.
Well, I was talking about that earlier. Somebody did. Was it you or Haas?
I didn't say that.
Genocide.
Second of all, hey, let me finish because Destiny made an accusation earlier. He said, "Why do we keep touting these RT propaganda lines that 81% of the people, civilians rather, who are dying in the eastern Ukraine conflict are Russians?" That or ethnic Russians, whatever you said. That's not what I said. I said that 81% of the civilians are dying in rebel-held territory, and that's not from RT. That's what the United Nations said. So apparently you now are confused between RT and the United Nations official sources. I'm confused as to just how serious you are about this debate.
Wait, so
Destiny only has narratives. He doesn't have any meat and potatoes.
Steven. Go ahead, Steven.
Wait, I'm sorry. The Leningrad leprechaun just threw me off. Can you repeat your question to me?
Destiny, you want to start talking about body types? You have the most grotesque.
Okay, my question to you.
Disgusting, skinny. That's Sid from Ice Age.
Destiny, my question to you was
Destiny, consider.
Just fucking mute him for a second. Why did you call it RT propaganda when these are United Nations figures, A, and B, why did you say that everyone here is ethnically Russian when you're in the Donbass, when I said that these are people who are dying in rebel-held territories, which is distinct from the opposite side of the gray zone?
Wait, what was the first thing said by you?
Beta male Bono, it looks like Sid from Ice Age. That's, he has
Stop.
He's got gyno. He literally has gyno.
No, all right. Jackson said something. Go ahead, Jackson.
The Soviet shorty over here is just destroying my ability to hear anything.
Beta male Bono, who is literally fucking built like fucking Sid from Ice Age, just a long torso, who isn't.
Okay, good. Let's go to Jackson.
He's talking about other.
No.
He's talking about other people's opinions.
The next question.
Beta male Bono look like an overgrown with a beard.
Says Dylan and Destiny. We got that.
I couldn't even hear it. The Russian runt was screaming so much I couldn't even fucking respond to his question. Was there a claim that the UN has said that there is an ongoing genocide in Donbass? Is that
no? You fucking
they said the opposite.
You said it was RT propaganda that 81% of the people died on rebel.
No, I didn't say that the claim itself is propaganda. I'm just saying that repeating
you
that,
did.
like
you said it was RT propaganda talking points.
I can tell you. Yes, talking points. Talking points. What I'm saying is that
that's what you said.
Yeah.
Do you want me to tell you what I said, or are you just going to keep screaming like your friend over here? The question is why we shouldn't be surprised to see that the majority of people dying in a Russian ethnic majority area are going to be ethnically Russian. That's not surprising.
No, listen, people fight for.
That's not Haz. That's not what I said. I said they're dying in rebel-held territory. The 81% are not that they're all ethnically Russian.
What is the percentage of ethnically Russian
people
in the
Destiny? Double V Destiny.
Right. Hey, Moscow Munchin, quiet.
Destiny,
can you answer that question?
Destiny.
Can you
that there are two warring factions? There's a rebel-held territory, and then there are the Ukrainian military and volunteer militaries warring on the other side. What I'm saying and what the United Nations is saying is that 81.4% of the civilians killed over the last 3 years, we don't have all the numbers, but over the last 3 years, died in rebel-held territory.
Go ahead, Destiny.
And what bitch tits Bono doesn't understand is that people are their sovereignty.
I want to hear his answer. I want to hear his answer.
Just like a man, his wife, and make sure.
Pause. I want to hear his answer.
I can't. The tiny tanky is too much for me. I just can't hear anything.
Yeah,
wanna
yeah.
hear his
Bitch
answer.
tits Bono does
All
and
right,
that
let's
people
jump
want to
into the
defend
next
their
one. This is coming in
land,
from
just like a man
Dank
wants to
Prol.
defend
We
his
have to
wife
jump into
from
the
not.
next one. Let's talk about Steven's body later. Dank Prol says, does Haas think we don't realize that whenever he is getting owned on a... Okay, never mind. Sorry about that.
Okay, you're a beta male and you think getting owned is from a fucking 32-year-old StarCraft player
Next
who
up-
literally has nothing going
All
fucking
right,
going
let's
for him
go
in
to the
life.
next one.
Yeah, yeah.
Says,
A
does-
fucking 32-year-old grown man
let's
StarCraft
jump
player
to the
with
next
fucking
one.
gynecomastia,
Okay, this one from Rihan says, does yelling at Max...
literally built like an 11-year-old child.
Hold on, Haas, come on.
Hold on to that comment.
This one coming in from Irvin says, yeah, that's right. Irvin Lockman says, Russia has the worst human trafficking problem of any country on earth. Are Haas and Jackson pro-child sex trafficking?
Uh-oh.
Are Destiny and Dylan Burns lowering the age of consent to 16? Because
As Destiny's friend, Mr. Girl, Destiny has a pedophile community.
All right, let's go to the next one. Luis
He
Romero
defends the
says,
pedophile.
this one,
the girl
come on,
with
Luis
art
Romero
fucking,
says, Jackson, do
he
you
wants to
actually
deep-
believe in chemical
pro-
weapons designed
he wants
to
to plat-
only target
pedophiles.
people with, quote, Russian genes?
Pedo
Really?
DGG.
No. Go ahead,
Literal
Jackson,
pedo
you were
fuck-
able to heard that.
Nobody
I
heard that.
didn't hear that.
Nobody heard it.
They
It's
said,
impossible.
Jackson, do you Jackson, do you believe in chemical weapons designed to only target people with quote unquote Russian genes? Really? That's what they say.
When did
That's
I say that?
completely
No,
irrelevant
Fred,
and
you're not.
immaterial to the debate here because
Okay,
even if
so Jackson
I
says
don't
he
think
didn't
they
say
even
that.
said you said.
Jackson
They're
never-
just asking. They're just asking.
Jackson
He's just
never made-
asking them the question if he believes it or not.
I think even Destiny and Dylan would admit that I never said that in the debate, and though they don't probably watch my streams, I can tell you I've never said that in my life.
No, I
Do you
don't think- but
disavow
the-
when Haas said it? Then
well,
do you
well, we're
disavow
just
the
asking if
Kremlin
you believe it or
gremlin?
not.
He
That's all.
doesn't have to disavow it. He
You
just isn't making the
disavow.
affirmative claim.
Do
You
you
fucking bitch tits
disavow?
Bono. You little fucking
We wanna
bitch.
jump
You fucking bitch.
Well, can I ask him then? Do you find the claim believable?
You fucking
Okay.
it's his wife.
I think.
By other
here's what
men.
I think.
I can't hear you. I can't. I'm sorry.
Here's what
I want to
think.
know if you support the
How
Haas
can I
make
insult-
this statement.
What are you talking about? His child.
This is exhausting.
I think.
How can I insult
No.
a
Go
4-year-old
ahead,
couple?
Dylan.
His child?
Go ahead,
I'm
Dylan.
sorry you're so weighted down this debate, Jackson. I'm so sorry.
I think that there are China and Russia at the United Nations have both expressed their concerns over chemical labs in Ukraine that get U.S. funding. There's several of them, but we don't really know what's going on there. And I think it would be, I don't think we can jump to conclusions as to what's happening there, except for what Russia and China have both said when they've expressed their concerns.
Bitch tits Bono.
This is-
Deadbeat dad
That's
Destiny.
not relevant at all.
Oh,
This one
deadbeat
coming in
dad.
from, do appreciate your question. Cedar
He's a
Skyler
little-
says, what?
32-year-old.
Says,
32
no, no.
Hold on.
And
Just so
let's-
the audience knows what's happening, James is right click muting him, and Haas is spam right click unmuting so that he can keep screaming into the microphone.
This one coming
Listen,
in from
Destiny,
Cedar, no.
can't
This
hide-
one coming in from what?
You can't hide the
No,
of knowing
stop.
and
Okay.
you
It is like
pain
it's
of
been-
knowing
no,
and
stop.
are with you can't pain with your we all pain because
Inbred Red, we need you to fucking shut the fuck up so you can finish the Q&A,
you
dude.
know you're in pain,
This one
Destiny.
coming in from. Okay. This is a thank you. So it's been so
Bro, you
long.
called me the StarCraft trooper here, but you got like 400 APM
This one
smashing the
coming in.
fucking
We have to go to the
unmute
next
button
one.
on your
This is
fucking
gonna-
mic.
You can't hide the
Just
pain.
Stop. This one coming.
We know you're men,
Take a
Destiny.
fucking RSI,
This
dude.
one-
You gotta slow down.
This one coming in from Cedar says, what are the panelists' thoughts on quote third? Is this a? I hope this isn't a troll. On third whole theory. No, that's okay. Never mind.
Destiny,
Chris
laugh through the
Morlock
pain.
is-
Laugh through the pain of knowing.
This one coming in from Chris
Cock.
Morlock.
Wait, was that
says-
three hole
Laugh-
theory? Wait, what did that
Yes.
have to do with?
Laugh through the pain, Destiny. Go
Stop,
ahead. Laugh.
No,
through
the three holes, it refers to the tripolar vacuum left behind by the three nuclear
Destiny,
powers,
Destiny.
the United Kingdom, the
You're,
United
Destiny,
States.
you're nothing but a fucking
And the
bluff,
Soviet
Destiny. You have no
That's
fucking
true.
substance, no meat and potatoes. You hide behind your left. I can see the
Hey,
pain
wait,
in your
wait,
eyes,
wait.
Bono. I
Can
can see the
just say-
pain in your eyes.
Can I
Just
can
like
I
Let's
just
see
say?
if this-
Can I just
Dylan's
say?
got
You
a
know who
point.
else doesn't have meat and
your
potatoes?
child. Your child's in
You know who else?
Destiny. He's,
You know who? Oh,
but he's not like
Go ahead,
like you.
Dylan.
you know who else doesn't have meat and potatoes? The Russian soldiers in Ukraine right now. Man, that's a lot of food shortage.
Yeah,
huh?
that's fake.
Fake
Prove
news,
it.
dude.
Okay.
Prove it.
Okay. Like just a quick breath. Okay.
I can't hear anything.
If they don't have proof.
This one coming in from.
Show any proof.
No, come on, Oz. How do you have so much energy? I like. Stan.
Show any proof. Show the proof.
Says. Stan says, does Haas still think the Donbass region is in the north of Ukraine?
I never fucking said that in the first place. Shut the fuck up. Fucking
Duly
DGG
noted.
pedos.
Okay, this one coming in from Constantine. Why do the East European countries beg to be a part of NATO every time the Russians start shelling a foreign city? It's almost as if Russian aggression is driving countries to join NATO.
It's almost as if those countries are called by far-right nationalists. Go ahead.
It's almost as if every single time the West leads a coup or regime change operations in a Central or Eastern European country, they make great strides either in, one of the four, main steps in joining NATO when they have this coup government in place. Have you ever noticed that?
I just want to say we didn't establish that it was a U.S.-led coup. We certainly didn't establish that. And
we more than established that with 5 billion.
Just for the record, Ukraine. Just for the record, Ukraine wasn't going to join NATO until the Crimean invasion happened.
What?
That's not true.
Changed.
Oh, you want to debate about that? We have evidence.
The Prime Minister literally said.
We have evidence to the contrary.
Literally, we have evidence to
the. Wait, Destiny. Do you know the 4 steps to join NATO for
being given the green light by NATO to join is not the same as them having an intention of joining.
Wait, evidence. Haz, wait, I'm curious. I want to hear Destiny's thoughts on this.
Gotta pull back.
First of all, do you know the 4 steps in joining NATO and how many of those steps Ukraine has achieved? And also, do you know what NATO said about Ukraine membership at the 2008 Bucharest before the Crimean referendum?
I don't care if they were given the green light in 200008. Yatsenyuk literally said, giving the green light,
but they didn't have an intent.
Let him finish.
After the coup, the prime minister literally said that there were no plans on the table to join NATO. He literally said that. That was his stated position. That changed once Russia invaded and annexed illegally the Crimean Peninsula. And that's why, and the other statements that countries have made about joining NATO have also changed as Russia has increased its aggression. That's why countries like Finland and Sweden are considering joining NATO, which, given what Russia's doing, seems to be pretty fair.
Yeah, because Russia's going to...
All right, Dylan,
I'll respond to that. First of all, in 2008 at the Bucharest summit, NATO declared that Ukraine could become a member state of NATO upon further deliberations and accession talks. But what I do want to say is you said that after the 2014 coup, they had no intent to join NATO. In 2017, the Ukrainian parliament adopted legislation reinstating membership in NATO as a strategic foreign and security policy.
What happened between 2014 and 2017? Why would they want to join NATO in 2017?
In 2019, a course.
Why would they want to join NATO in
2017? Why would they want to join NATO in 2019?
You sound like a little bitch.
Okay.
You've always sounded...
No, wait. What? Why would they want to join NATO in 2017 and in 2019? What happened?
And Jackson? What happened after 2014 in Eastern Ukraine? We could go there too.
No, let's go exactly to what I said. Do you deny that the prime minister literally said that they were not
at the
seeking
trade union hall massacre?
They were not. Okay, yeah, pivot. Okay.
You're the one pivoting.
I'm not pivoting. I made it very
Destiny, what was Maidan about? What was the fucking Maidan about? They wanted to fucking join NATO, you dumb fuck. That was before any fucking crime.
No, it wasn't about joining NATO. It was
about the EU and NATO as a whole. They wanted to turn. It was an anti-Russian fucking movement.
It wasn't.
They had every intention to join NATO by then.
It was not about joining NATO. It was about European Union trade deals.
It was about joining the West in general.
Can you mute the Holodomor Hobbit again, please?
It was about
Holodomor.
It was about that.
There's 2 things I want to...
Deadbeat Destiny. I want to keep at the Destiny.
James, I'm trying so hard, man. Please.
Laugh through the pain.
Destiny.
Hey, James.
Wait, it was my turn. Wait, no.
Destiny or Dylan. Dylan.
But I never have to say. I've been waiting for so...
Wait.
No,
you don't need him when he
insults
insults me, but you only need me.
I want to
fucking tell him you don't want me to...
Okay, so there's 2 things I want to...
You don't mute him when he insults me. I'm going to go full fucking beast.
I'm not insulting you right now. I'm trying
hiding behind laughter. I
just want to say something.
If we were insulting you, okay, Vladimir the Virgin, we'd be asking you about 3-hole theory.
I'm not high enough for
Go ahead,
this.
Dylan.
I could.
Okay. So So I would like to say that. So the Euromaidan protesters was it started because Yanukovych pulled out of negotiations to join the EU, and then once the protest movement started, then it expanded to like anti-corruption and a lot of other issues as well. And there were people on the ground, not all of them. The Euromaidan protests were extremely diverse, but some of them did want to join NATO. But that doesn't mean it started because of that. It started once Yanukovych pulled out of EU negotiations. And the second thing I wanted to bring up about NATO was that after the Russian invasion, the regime change war they started in Ukraine. Now, Finland, the first time in human history, the majority of Finnish people want to join NATO. Putin has gifted NATO something. He has gifted them legitimacy in the modern age, where there was tons of people like the Finns. He's like, I don't know about joining this NATO.
Why does it even exist?
Now, why does
And they're going to put nukes in Venezuela. Good luck with that. Russia's going to put nukes in Venezuela. Good luck with it.
What is that?
Yeah,
even-
you expand NATO to Finland, then Russia's going to make military pacts with Cuba and Venezuela all over the fucking world against the U.S. empire. Good luck with that.
Russia can't even get its four-wheel trucks into fucking eastern Ukraine. I don't think we have
Oh, really? Really? Where's the evidence for that? Do you have any evidence for that? There's no fucking proof of that there's a logistical disaster. It's all fucking made up on Twitter, AstroTurf, fake news. We've debunked it on my stream several fucking times. It's not fucking true. Hey, Destiny, I know you love having your mouth open because you like soying out.
Of tire, I could send you photos of tire.
Keep opening your mouth. Soy mouth.
Can we mute this Redditor's microphone?
keep
Jesus.
Haz, I'm gonna ask if you want. I could send you pictures of tire rot amongst
Keep
Russian
open.
dating. Okay.
Pictures of what?
Tire rot. You know when if you don't do proper maintenance on trucks, the tires will rot out, and that's
Go
become a
ahead.
huge
Show us
issue.
the proof. Show us
Okay,
the
I can-
widespread logistical disaster.
Well, I'm not saying logistics. I'm talking about tire rot right now. Logistics is another issue.
Show us the widespread tire rot.
The widespread tire. I can give you
Yes.
examples of tire rot, but until we find out, do a proper investigation, we're not gonna have. Oh, there's tire
Because you
rot
don't know
amongst all the
shit.
trucks.
Because
Well,
there's no fucking failure
no,
of their
you're not
fucking
listening.
four-wheel.
If any of the vehicles invading Ukraine is experiencing tire rot, that means proper maintenance was not done on those vehicles.
If
meaning
any
that-
of them,
Yes, if any of them, because
So it could be-
when you talk
One,
about
it could be-
when you do maintenance on
Two.
these vehicles, you don't do it like one at a time. You do maintenance like you circle maintenance.
If
so
there's a mis-
okay,
if
I'm
there's
not,
a
I'm
mis-
not gonna, I
one
can't,
or
I'm
two
not-
ve-
I give up. I
James,
give up.
why?
Jackson, it's
I give up.
because
Why are you
still
muting me?
talking when you? I mean, sorry, not Jackson.
Because you never give me a chance to say anything.
Well,
You let
half of
Dylan
it
and
is-
Destiny talk this whole fucking time, and I didn't get to say shit.
Half
He's the
of
Moscow.
it-
He's the
You
Moscow
guys
mute, dude.
can go
It's not fair over here.
The
That
Moscow
doesn't
Mauler.
fucking mean anything.
Well, okay. Want to say thanks, folks, so much
You're a
for tuning
fucking
in.
biased moderator, James. You're a biased fucking moderator.
You have been.
He keeps fucking insulting me, talking over me. You didn't mute him once. You didn't mute this little fucking gnome once. This little
He did
gnome
mute me.
Destiny.
Stuff.
You didn't mute the gnome Destiny once.
You muted me multiple times.
Yeah, I was muted.
No,
Hey,
you
can we
fucking weren't.
actually prove, James?
Not once.
James. Real talk. Can you prove right now that you haven't received any of that $5 billion that was marked to Ukraine? Are you part of the
True.
anti?
Hey, passive aggressive jokes only bitch ass fucking pedo nerds find funny. Shut the fuck up, little bitch. Nobody fucking has your sense of humor except pedos like Mr. Girl. Nobody shares your fucking passive aggressive, fast talking, mumbling, stumbling sense of fucking StarCraft humor, you little bitch.
Jeez, okay.
You fucking laughing, Destiny, you passive aggressive little bitch. Destiny, let me air your dirty laundry, Destiny, because I found out a lot of things about you, Destiny. Let me air your dirty laundry, motherfucker.
do it, please.
Yeah, let me air your dirty laundry, Destiny, you motherfucker.
This stuff. Want to say, folks, thanks so much for tuning in. Our guests are linked in the description. And want to say thank you so much for all of your super chats. We've raised hundreds of dollars tonight for Worldwide Orphans, which is the charity watchdog evaluation. Is in the
Bitch
description
tits
as well.
Bonnell, bitch tits Bonnell.
No, not okay.
Dead big dad
We're talking about
Destiny.
charity.
Deadbeat dad Destiny.
Trying to talk about
Are you gonna let
charity.
Ivan the incel over here make fun of me like this, James?
We wanna
Destiny,
say-
Destiny, you literally let your wife get sleep with other men. You're fucking living insult. You're a 32-year-old cuck and you're talking about incels? You're
No,
talking
we
about
wanna say-
incels when you're a literal
thanks so much.
cuck? Destiny, you failed.
Okay, want to say thanks, everybody. We love
Destiny,
you
the
guys.
girls
I hope
you
have a
failed to
great
get with,
rest of
talk
your
to me, you
night.
little
Keep
bitch.
sifting out the
Please give me
reasonable-
some names, dude.
Keep sifting out the reasonable from the.
The list is too long.
Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you in the next debate. Take care, everybody. And thanks so much for your
There's
donation.
no bonus round? We're done.
We'll put the receipt on the social tab and the YouTube social community tab. Want to say thanks so much. And that's something that no matter where we stand on the war, that's something we all agree on, is it's a good cause, helping out orphans around the world. And so, again, we'll share that donation receipt on the YouTube social page. Thanks, everybody, and we'll see you next time.
Bitch Tids Bonnell. Fucking lost.